Line viewers, it's Mitch here, live. First time in a while that I've been live for a live stream. I'm excited because tonight, it's going to be a long night. It's going to be a fun night. I'm excited for you guys, and I'm also excited just to talk about this because we're talking about NFL free agency. I'm going to do an entire in-depth preview for every single team in this video. So, if you like that, make sure that you guys do Gronk spike the like button before we get into this. I'm going to be taking your questions. I'm going to be going in depth on every team, their needs, some of the players possibly that they could go after, and analyze each team and what they needed free agency and how much money they have to spend, how they're going to go about spending, their game plan this free agency, everything free agency for every team. You're not going to have another channel on YouTube that does a video like this. I promise you that. So before we do get into this, guys, make sure you do Gronk spike the like button. And of course, subscribe to the Bottom Line View if you haven't already. And I want to hear from you guys in the comment section below. So let me know your opinion. Do you like what I have to say about your team? Do you dislike? Also, before we even get started, let me know what your team needs are, what you think your team needs to go after, maybe some specific players. Let me know in the comment section below. Let me hear your opinion. All right, guys, so let's switch over and let's get into the first team. I'm going to get right into it, Buffalo Bills. So the Buffalo Bills, we're going to go AFC to the NFC, starting off with the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are a team, of course, making the playoffs last year. They have quite a few needs, but nothing like absolutely pressing on their football team. When you do take a look at the Bills, they have a lot of cap space. They have the fourth most cap space available. They have $83 million to spend this offseason. Of course, it doesn't all have to be spent this offseason, but this offseason is really interesting for the Bills because I feel like if there's an offseason where you could overtake the Patriots in the last 10 years, it's this offseason. If there was a season where you could win the AFC East, it's this season of the past, like, I don't know, since Tom Brady and Bill Belichick have been around running the Patriots. And with all the uncertainty surrounding Tom Brady, with all the uncertainty surrounding the Patriots, and as the Patriots continue to get older, I think this only opens the opportunity for the Buffalo Bills to sneak in there, win the AFC East, and I do think there will be a team that will be in contention for the playoffs. So let's take a look at their team needs, starting off with the offensive line. So the Buffalo Bills, they want to build a strong offensive line, and actually last night, shout out to my boy Adam who goes to school with me. He is a Bills fan, and he let me know that they are really, really into building this offensive line, and I could see why. I agree with him. You know, they spent money on Mitch Morse at center. They like Dion Dawkins at left tackle. Outside of that, though, they don't really love anyone on the offensive line. You have Feliciano at right guard, who could be upgraded, but he's not bad. I believe he ranked 35th from PFF at right guard, at guard this year. So he's a starting caliber guard, but he's nothing really special. I think left guard is the spot where you could see them go out and potentially pay money to upgrade that spot. The interesting thing is, though, who do they go after? Do they go after Joe Thuney of the Patriots and try and really land a big name at that spot and really upgrade that offensive line? When you watch the Bills this past season and Josh Allen, a lot of the pressure on Josh Allen was coming up the middle. You know, they're attacking the interior of that offensive line with specific blitz schemes, and I do think they want to upgrade that spot. Whether that's in the draft or free agency, we'll have to see. There's not a lot of high-profile guards in free agency. There's Graham Glasgow, there's Joe Thuney. There's not really a lot of them. So maybe they go after one of those two guys, but outside of that, it's probably more of a draft upgrade. When you're looking at Cody Ford, he's the interesting case of this offensive line, because last year he struggled at right tackle. I think he ranked below the 70s by PFF at tackle. So he was not a starting caliber tackle, even though he started for the Bills, a playoff team, at right tackle. So the question is, he was a second round pick last year. Do they move him off of the right tackle spot to guard, or do they, and potentially replace him at tackle and maybe pay for a tackle, like maybe Brian Bulaga or somebody like that? Maybe they really swing for the fences and go for like Conklin. I don't know. They could upgrade that spot and move Ford to guard, or they could keep Ford there. Now, outside of the offensive line, edge is a big position that I think the Bills should be targeting. Trent Murphy, he's older now, same as Jerry Hughes. Both of them cost a lot of money. And specifically Trent Murphy, if they did actually want to cut Trent Murphy, they could, if they wanted to. They don't have to. Obviously, they could keep him around for another year. But if they wanted to, I think they would gain back another $8 million in their salary cap. Now, they're in a position where they can pay him the $9 million, whatever it is, and not have to worry about it. He did play pretty well for them last year, but he's also a guy that's had some injury issues over the course of his career. Jerry Hughes is still a pretty darn good player. I wouldn't say he's a stud, but he's still a very good edge player. So they have those two guys. The question is, Shaq Lawson might be leaving in free agency, who was a lot better last year, a high draft pick in the past. Do they decide to replace him? Do they decide to draft somebody? Do they decide to go after a free agent? I know I've brought up Mario Addison. I brought up a trade for Yannick Ngakoue at defensive end. Jordan Phillips at defensive line in the interior is another guy who is a free agent. He had 9.5 sacks or 10 sacks last year, so he is a pass rusher, pure pass rusher. That's the interesting thing. Does Ed Oliver develop into that type of guy? Or do they have to maybe add another pass rushing interior guy or just an edge guy? And the thing about the NFL now is that these guys kind of play interchangeably. On third downs, you might see Trent Murphy move to the inside and pass rush. You might see Jerry Hughes do that. Probably not. He's a little small for that. But just as an example, these interior guys really, like Star Lotulelei is a first, second run stuffing type player. I would say the same about Harrison Phillips, who didn't get to play all of last season. He is a good player, but he's mostly just known for stopping the run. So what do they do there on the defensive line to add some pass rushing depth if Jordan Phillips does not return? And what do they do at the edge position? There's so many names here. Just look at Ngakoue, Clowney. Do they go after Armstead, Fowler, Judon, Dupree, Griffin? If he goes and leaves Minnesota, I think that would be a great fit. Robert Quinn, I think, would be a very good fit. Like I said, Addison. I think Vic Beasley would be interesting. I mean, Bruce Irvin. There's a lot of guys here. Ogba is a lower tier guy that I think would be nice. Claiborne, even as a third down pass rusher, would be interesting. There's like 25 names at the edge position in free agency. So if there's one position they go after in free agency, it's got to be edge. Now, besides that, wide receiver and tight end. They have Cole Beasley at the slot. He's a good player. They have John Brown, who had a really good season. But do they bring in a number one receiver? Do they swing for the fences for Amari Cooper? Do they draft a receiver? Maybe, I would think not in the first, but maybe in the second or the third round. This is a very deep draft for the wide receiver position. And really, this isn't a great free agency for wide receivers, but I could see them going after like a Brashad Perryman to add more speed to the receiver core, or maybe steal Robbie Anderson. I think they need a guy that's speedy, but I also think they need a guy that can separate, like John Brown and Cole Beasley. They're both able to separate in their routes, and they're not really body guys, because Josh Allen isn't the most accurate quarterback in the world. He has a strong arm, he can get it there, but he's not going to be a guy that places the football, so you don't really want those big-bodied receivers to try and make a play on the ball. You want those guys that can separate, get open, and then Allen with his throw power can get the ball there quickly so that you can run after the catch for good yardage. So we'll have to see what they do at that position. Some lower tier guys like Tajay Sharp I think would be interesting. Philip Dorsett, Nelson Aguilar. These guys could also be signed for relatively cheap. I'm looking at running back as well. Will they sign a backup? Will they draft a backup? Singletary was very good when he got to play last year late in the season, but I do think they need to add somebody to complement him. I probably would look to the draft for that, but free agency is another option. Of course, they did sign Josh Norman. I think that was a really good signing for their system. I think they're good at corner on the outside. My question is, what do they do at nickel corner? Because they have the two Johnsons. One of them is a free agent. Kevin Johnson's a free agent. Both of them played kind of interchangeably last year in the slot. So do they go after another corner on the market to maybe replace him or maybe upgrade that spot? Could they swing for Chris Harris? They have the money to do so. That would be the biggest name at the cornerback spot in the slot. Guys, let's I don't know what I'm going to do for the comments. I think I'm going to, if you guys have any specific, I'll look if you guys have any specific team related questions for the team that I'm talking about. I'll answer those questions while I'm talking about them. And then after that, I'll just kind of skim through the comments. So after every team, I'm going to skim through the comments. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to give you enough depth with every team, but also give you enough detail and speed, because I don't want to be here for 4 hours. I'd prefer to only be here for 2. You know what I mean? So let's do it that way. What's going on, guys, in the chat, though? I appreciate you. I can't give all the shout-outs, but I appreciate all of you guys that are here live. And if you haven't already, guys, make sure you do, of course, Gronk Spike the like button. All right. AJ Green is interesting. I don't think AJ Green would be the right player for Buffalo. We'll talk about AJ Green a little bit later. All right, so the Bills, they're done. The Bills are interesting, though. They have a lot of money to spend. I think they will spend it. I just think that it should be on the positions of edge, possibly slot corner, and offensive line. If they're going elsewhere, I think that's going to wait for the draft. Maybe they sign some lower tier players for defensive depth at safety or linebacker in free agency, but I don't think they're going to swing huge at those positions because they don't need to, because they have players there. And they also need to think about the future because they're a young team like Tre'Davious White, and these type of players need to be signed in the future. So you got to think about that as well. All right, Miami. Miami is next. I believe Miami is going to have a huge free agency. I don't really know where they're going to sign these players, who they're going to sign, but all I know is that they're going to spend some money because they're the Miami Dolphins. They have the most salary cap. They have the worst roster in pro football. They did last year, and they overachieved. Brian Flores overachieved with this roster, and I'm sure he's looking to have a better roster this year because he's going to say to himself, and he's going to say to the general manager, look at what I did with this team. Give me some players, and maybe we can make some noise. So I have my needs listed there. Obviously, let's start with quarterback. So quarterback looks to be a draft need for the Dolphins. They may decide to go and swing for a Teddy Bridgewater or sign a Jameis Winston. Who knows? But I doubt it. I'm just saying that is an option if they wanted to. I don't think they'll be bringing back Ryan Tannehill, though, and I don't think they'll be in play for Tom Brady. So maybe Teddy Bridgewater, possibly Jameis Winston. Outside of that, I don't think quarterback would be the play in free agency, but it's definitely a play in the draft. I think Tua could be their guy. We'll have to see. Maybe Herbert as well. Those are the two names. But Fitzpatrick, I feel like they're confident enough if they don't get a guy in free agency. They're fine because Fitzpatrick can be the bridge quarterback because he played well last year. So quarterback, that's done. Defensive line, offensive line, talking about both of those. So let's start with offensive line. Who's going to be protecting possibly Tua, Herbert, or one of these rookie quarterbacks? So their offensive line is horrible. Really, the only position I would say that is decent is center with Kilgore. He's their best player on the offensive line. Outside of that, Jesse Davis, he was awful. I believe he ranked like 81st at like tackle, and he started for the Miami Dolphins. The rest of the line is pretty bad. Both the guard positions and the left tackle as well. They got Davenport from Houston and then trade for Tunzel, and they moved on from Tunzel. They didn't want to pay him, and they wanted to get those draft picks to rebuild their team, which I do believe was the smart decision, but Tunzel's a really good player, so they'll be without him. They'll have to replace him. They have 3 first-round picks, so whenever thinking about the Dolphins, what they're going to do in free agency, they're probably one of the only teams that's thinking about what they're doing in the draft before they're doing it, or what they're doing in free agency, because teams typically, okay, we sign this free agent, now we adjust and we fill out the rest of what we weren't able to get in free agency in the draft, right? So with the Dolphins, they have 3 firsts, so they basically can maneuver whatever they want and get whatever player they want, basically. So that is kind of reverse psychology in what you want to do in free agency. So looking at the line, they could, if they wanted to, they could go after like Conklin. They could. I don't think Costanzo will be an option for them because I think he's going to go back to the Colts. But maybe they could go for Balaga, although I don't think that he would want to go there because he's older. Like, I don't think Whitworth or Peters are options because they're just older players that don't want to play for the Dolphins at this point. And they're also, I don't think the Dolphins want those players because they realize that they're not in contention this season. Maybe next year they could make the playoffs, but I don't think this year is a realistic option. I think a really interesting one is Darrell Williams. He's used to be at least a really good player. He was a second-team All-Pro at tackle for Carolina in 2017, I believe. So he was good at one point and a really good player at one point. Maybe they could get him for a decent cost, not very high money, but he would definitely be probably their best offensive lineman from day one. And he could play tackle or he could play guard. So that would be an interesting add. Joe Thuney obviously is an option. I don't know why I didn't bring him up first, but Joe Thuney having the option and the connection with the coach Brian Flores, that's obviously going to draw some interest there. I do believe that this is probably the lead candidate for Joe Thuney because they have the most cap to spend. They have a huge need at left guard, and obviously there's a connection between the coach and the player. And Joe Thuney is a player that you're going to get your money's worth because Joe Thuney is a very good guard. He is excellent in pass protection, and that is what you want out of your offensive lineman more than anything today. And you also want a guy that's going to play. And Joe Thuney has not missed a game in his entire career. Hopefully I don't jinx him on that. But he is tough as nails, and he's a leader, and he's a champion. So if you want an offensive lineman, Joe Thuney is the guy. Vaitai is interesting. I've heard that he has brought some noise from the Eagles. He played and started at right tackle during the year that the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Halipoli Vaitai. He's interesting because I feel like I don't have a great sense of how great he is as a player. I do think he does deserve to start on a team, and maybe the Dolphins, given they have so much salary cap, could get him for a decent deal and not have to worry about maybe overpaying him. Some other interesting names, I feel like there's a lot of lower tier guys. Kelly from Tennessee, Affetti and Fant from Seattle, Ramers from the Giants, Robinson, who was horrible for Cleveland, Beacham from the Jets, who's an older name. Gilbert is a guy that's interesting because he missed a lot of time last year, but was a good player before that. I think really you're looking at Thuney at guard. You're looking at maybe Glasgow at guard. You're looking at maybe Karras at probably not center. Like I said, they're pretty decent at center. I think they're going to go with a tackle in the draft, at least one of their picks. So maybe they fix one of their tackles this year in the draft. Maybe they draft two tackles in the draft. They have so many options, and it's so wide open that it's so hard to say, but I do think that Joe Thuney probably ends up in Miami. Then you look at the edge position. They have nobody at this position either. I mean, the Dolphins were probably the hardest team to make a top 5 needs for because they just have so many needs. Now, I think in terms of their defensive line, they're not awful. If they can re-sign John Jenkins, who was actually decent for them last year, they can. Obviously, they have Wilkins, who was their first-round pick last year. Those are two decent pieces. And then you kind of can work from there. Taco Charlton is we'll see what he is. He was a former first-round pick. Maybe they can get the potential out of him from Dallas before. But the edge position needs work. I think they're okay at linebacker. I think McMillan and Baker are decent players. Beagle is probably going to stick around as a linebacker edge player as well. Charles Harris could stick around as well. But outside of that, I mean, the entire thing is open at linebacker and edge player. So when thinking about Brian Flores, what he likes is he likes hybrid edge players, guys that can set the edge very well, but also are pretty athletic and can blitz. So when looking at that, I think they're definitely a candidate for Jadeveon Clowney because Clowney is that type of athlete that would change this defense, and he would perfectly fit, I think, what Flores is looking for. I think Dante Fowler is interesting. Judon is interesting. I don't think Ngakoue is the greatest option, although some people seem to think that is the best option for Miami. I just don't think he fits the scheme as well as some think. Barnett's going to be franchise tag, so that's not an option. Maybe they sign Armstead for their defensive line. I could see that. He's a big player. I think he could play in any scheme. I think he's definitely going to be an option for a lot of teams. Kyle Van Noy is an option. Jamie Collins is an option, of course, from the Patriots. I think they're probably going to try and go after one of these bigger names. I don't know really who it's going to be. My guess that it's probably Clowney. Maybe it's Bud Dupree. I don't know. But I do believe they're going to come away with at least one of these edge players at the top of the list. So one of these top 10 edge guys, I suspect Miami will sign. If they don't, I would consider that a fail, in my opinion. Cornerback and safety, they have Howard. They have, who else do they have? Tankersley is there. He's not bad. He didn't play a lot last year. Rashad Jones is at safety. I do believe they want to move on from him and his contract. It's kind of hard to do, though, because they have a lot of dead money. Talib is a free agent. I don't think he'll be coming back. McCain is the other safety. Eric Rowe played a lot last year. He could play safety or corner, so he's not a bad piece to have, but he's not a great player. I don't think they're going to go after a corner in free agency. Maybe I'm totally wrong. I think Byron Jones would be one heck of a signing to team up with Xavier Howard, and I think that would be fascinating. But I don't really see them as one of the candidates there. Maybe. I could be wrong. Maybe like Kendall Fuller. Maybe one of these mid-tier guys. Bradley Roby, Poole, Denard. One of these guys could be an option. One of the younger guys that are kind of maybe reaching their peak could be an option at corner in free agency. Safety-wise, maybe they try and go for Devin McCourty. That's a possibility. Maybe they try and go for one of these other guys. I don't think Harris will be the guy they go for. Simmons isn't probably going to hit the market, but that would be an awesome signing. Jimmy Ward would be interesting. Clinton Dix, Boston. There's a lot of safeties on the market as well. They have the pick of the litter, man. They could sign whoever they want. Even at linebacker, if they want to sign Littleton, if they want to go out and sign DJ Reader or Hargrave. Miami is such an interesting team, such a fascinating team because they have so many options. They have so much cap. They have so many available spots on their team because not a lot of these players are very good. But the other thing about Miami is they have a lot of these players on their roster for next season. I think the way that I really respect the way Miami has built this crappy team is because they've put a lot of pieces in place at the very least. They don't have a lot of free agents. I mean, their best free agent is John Jenkins, which I think a lot of you guys don't even know who that is. I think they might get rid of Albert Wilson, and that would give them even more money, and they could go out and sign a receiver. Do they want to go after Amari Cooper for their rookie quarterback? They could do a lot of these different things, and I think Gesicki tight end, they're good. Running back, I mean, they could get Melvin Gordon. I didn't even bring that up if they wanted. I don't think they're going to bring back Kenyon Drake, but they could definitely go after Derrick Henry if he hits the market. These are all possibilities with the Miami Dolphins, which makes the Miami Dolphins probably the most interesting team. But when I'm thinking defense, I think they really want to sign edge players. They really want to sign probably defensive linemen. And then I think third would be corner. And then I think they're going to go all after offensive line as much as they can. But receiver, they're not bad. So let's get to those questions on the Miami Dolphins if you guys have any questions at all. Yes, to clarify, Williams did play guard last year for Carolina. He did not play tackle last year, but he has played tackle. He played it at an all-pro level, so he can play both, definitely. Ivana says, Dolphins about to overpay for a lot of free agents. By the time they can compete, all will be old. Build through the draft. Well, they're definitely going to be building through the draft. They have 3 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, so they have a lot of picks. But it's not a bad thing to spend your money. I know some people will look at it in a negative way, negative connotation. It's not. It's not. You can spend money. And just imagine, the Dolphins, I think, were 4-12 or 5-11 last year. If they just get a couple more players on both sides of the ball, they'll be a lot better. Because this team is the worst team in the NFL from a roster perspective, and Flores was able to get that out of them. So we'll see. Yeah, so the Dolphins, they're unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. Let me know what's going to happen, because I don't know. All right. Next team, we have the New England Patriots. I will try not to take an hour on this specific team, but this team is interesting. Very interesting, right? So the Patriots, of course, their number one need is quarterback. Sign Tom Brady, please. And I'll get into the plan if Tom Brady does not come back. All right, so the Patriots, they have a lot of free agents. I think they really have more important free agents this year than I can remember, but they always seem to have important free agents. I think it's just that Tom Brady makes it even more... you have to look at it differently because Tom Brady is he's gonna make a lot of money because he's a quarterback. So it makes it harder to re-sign your players. But it seems like every year the Patriots are flipping good players on their team. I mean, their left tackle last year made a record number of money at left tackle in Trent Brown, and Trey Flowers made one of the biggest contracts at defensive end. People forget that they had those guys last year, right? So those guys are not on the team this past year. So they flip players regularly, and their players go for a large chunk of money, just like Joe Thuney will this offseason. Let's start with the quarterback position. So I do believe right now that Tom Brady will be a Patriot, and I'm going to stand by that until he goes somewhere else. I just look at it, and I don't think there's many options for Tom Brady in terms of where he is going to actually be able to play. I think the only two realistic options that are better than New England, than re-signing with New England, are possibly San Francisco and maybe Tennessee. But, okay, two things here. San Francisco is a better team. I think that's the only team. If they said, we want Brady, they would get him over New England. Other than that, and then you also have to think of, they don't have a lot of salary cap, so they would have to get rid of Jimmy somehow and then get Brady, right? Other than that, Tennessee, Derrick Henry's a free agent, right? Conklin's a free agent, so that makes that team a lot less attractive. They have to re-sign Henry, and they won't get back Conklin. That's arguably a worse offensive line than New England has it if they lose Conklin, right? So those are the only two teams. Maybe the Raiders. I would give the Raiders an outside chance because they have a lot of money. They have draft capital. They could be good in short order if they had Tom Brady. But I just don't see Brady wanting to revamp his entire offensive mindset, change his entire scheme, and go play for John Gruden's offense. It doesn't make sense to me. I think Tom Brady's back in New England because Tom Brady's not going to want to change his offense. Tom Brady is going to want to go somewhere where he can win. And that's a short list in the NFL, especially a short list that doesn't have a quarterback, right? Teams that are going to be able to win this year most likely have a quarterback. You're talking about the Chiefs. You're talking about the Ravens. You're talking about the Saints or the NFC teams. You're talking about 49ers, right? Those teams mostly have quarterbacks. The only one that's interesting is the 49ers because they asked for Tom Brady in a trade before. That's his hometown. And Jimmy is an okay quarterback, but he's not great. So I think Brady is back. Now, if Brady is not back for whatever reason, I think that I hate the Andy Dalton ideas. I don't like the Teddy Bridgewater idea. These are the quarterbacks looking at, okay, first off, Dak. I'd love to have Dak. It's not going to happen. He wants too much money, so cross him off. Drew Brees is going to New Orleans, and I'll get to that when we get to the Saints, which is going to be probably in 2 hours. Ryan Tannehill could be an option. I think of any of the free agent quarterbacks that make sense, Ryan Tannehill makes the most sense. I think Belichick likes him. He's a good athlete. He's a pretty decent quarterback. Belichick knows him well because he played in Miami, and he played Miami a lot, and he studied him a lot. I think Tannehill is only getting better, actually. And I think Tannehill is probably the closest in actual skill to Tom Brady other than Drew Brees. So other than that, I mean, I would welcome Jameis Winston, but he just doesn't seem like the Patriot type of quarterback. But I would love to see it because, one, it would be exciting, and two, he's a baller. He makes a lot of mistakes, but he's a baller. And with this defense for New England that they have, I think you could afford having Jameis Winston throwing 4 touchdowns a game and 4 picks, because I think even if you threw 4 picks a game, you would still be able to stop them most of the time from getting a touchdown, so you would win. But anyways, that's my Jameis Winston theory. Other than that, I think you have to go with Stidham. My plan, if Brady leaves, is go with Stidham because I actually think he can be good. And I actually think you give him a chance. And this is my thing with if Tom Brady leaves. If Tom Brady leaves, look at all the free agents that the Patriots have. Tom Brady leaves, Joe Thuney's leaving, all right? Jamie Collins is going to leave. Kyle Van Noy is going to leave. Devin McCourty, if Brady leaves, is probably going to be like, I'm going to leave too. I'm going to go play. Maybe I'll go play for $5 million with Kansas City, or I'm going to go to the Giants and make $20 million. You know what I mean? So a lot of these veteran players are not going to want to come back if Tom Brady is gone. So I might as well just start over, go with Stidham. If Stidham's good for the year, you keep him. If he's not good, you get your top 10 draft pick and you draft a quarterback next year. That would be my plan because this is, I think, the oldest roster in the NFL. So they're ready to win now with Tom Brady. And if they are not having Tom Brady, might as well rebuild. That's my theory on quarterback. Okay, hopefully I didn't spend too much time there. Wide receiver and tight end. Obviously, if they bring back Brady, regardless, they need wide receivers, they need tight ends. I think the options here, I don't think they're going to be able to get Amari Cooper. I would love to get Amari Cooper, but I just put that out there for fun. AJ Green. They would have to trade for AJ Green. The thing with AJ Green is, he's a win now option, but how healthy is AJ Green? I think, honestly, the option and the player that the Patriots are going to get is a player we don't know of yet. Is a player that maybe it's a guy that's in the last year of his contract that you could trade for that's not overly expensive, but he's a good receiver and you could grab him. Maybe it's Stephon Diggs. Maybe it's Odell. Maybe it's like Robert Woods. Maybe it's one of these guys out there that you could grab in a trade for a decent price, not a lot, but is not going to break the bank for you in free agency, and is because I think the Patriots need a number one receiver. To me, adding Emmanuel Sanders, I would love it, but I don't think it really changes a lot. I think it changes a little. It makes them better, but I don't think it makes them a lot better. I don't think it makes them win a Super Bowl team to me. But if they add like Odell, if they add Stephon Diggs, then I think they're a Super Bowl team again. That's the difference, because you add that number one weapon, which they didn't have last year. They didn't have a Gronk last year, which the defense has to pay attention to. So that's my theory on that as well. I don't like a lot of these options in free agency for the Patriots. I like Emmanuel Sanders. I don't think Robbie Anderson fits because I don't think they're a vertical offense. You could re-sign Dorsett, but I think he'll go somewhere for more money. I don't mind Randall Cobb. That's not a bad option for this offense. You tried the Demaryius Thomas thing before. These names aren't great. Now, tight end is interesting because I do think they should sign a free agent tight end, and my pick would be Eric Ebron, because I do think that he is the one that can replicate Rob Gronkowski's red zone production because he's done it before. He did it with Andrew Luck, and I think Brady is really good with tight ends and really good with big targets, and I think Ebron would really benefit. He's very athletic, and even though he doesn't block well, he's a really good receiver, and he does get open, and he's tough to cover. So I like Eric Ebron. I think Hooper is going for too much money, and I don't really think Hooper is amazing. I think he's good, he's solid, but I don't think he's worth the money he's going to get. Hunter Henry, if he's on the market, I would love, but I don't think he's going to be on the market. But if he is, he's definitely an option because he's the best all-around tight end in free agency. Jordan Reed, if he's healthy, he would be a great signing. Tyler Eifert, same thing. I believe he will be healthy. I think Tyler Eifert is the guy most likely that lands in New England because Belichick has already raved about him, and he's the type of signing that won't be very expensive, and he's actually a pretty good receiver and would be a massive upgrade to the tight end position. He wouldn't be Gronk or anything like top tier, but he would definitely not be in the bottom tier of the league. He would probably be somewhere in the top 15 tight ends in the league in terms of receiving. So Tyler Eifert is probably the option, but we'll have to see what they do. Edge. I think edge is a position that New England needs. I mean, Kyle Van Noy is going to leave. They have Winovich, who I think he's going to see a massive jump this year. I think he's going to be really good. I could see him having like 10 sacks this season. They still have John Simon, and he's not bad. He was a starting player for them last year. He's pretty good. Dietrich Wise is there, defensive line. Lawrence Guy is still there. Adam Butler. These kind of work in conjunction. Danny Shelton is leaving. Jamie Collins is probably going to leave. We'll have to see, though. Landon Roberts at linebacker. He was more of a special team and actual fullback than linebacker, but he could leave as well. So when looking at the linebacker and edge position, because for New England, they kind of do the same thing. I think Dante Hightower and Juwan Bentley are your linebackers next year, and I think that's perfectly fine because they're both good players, especially Hightower. Actually, Hightower had a really good year last year. Collins, if you could bring him back, you would welcome it because he can do both. Hightower might have to move to the edge, and you might have to bring in a linebacker or draft one, more an athletic guy. We'll have to see if they do that. At the edge position, though, there's a lot of options. You could go with Jordan Jenkins from the Jets. You could go with Pierre Paul, which I think would be awesome. I don't think you're going to go after a top-tier name, but you could go after Mario Addison. You could go after Vic Beasley. You could go after Carl Nassib, Ogba, probably Sheard maybe for a reunion. You could go after a lot of these different guys. Fackrell from Green Bay. These kind of hybrid linebacker edge players that I think would fit the defense very well. Yeah, those are probably the names that stick out. They don't need corners. I suspect Devin McCourty will be back. Their safety position is solid, but I think they would probably spend a draft pick on safety if they wanted to. And, of course, left guard. Now, left guard, Froholt is probably, the rookie from last year, is probably going to be the starter this year. But I do think that if they don't draft somebody high, he'll be the starter. I think they could bring in like a lower tier guy that maybe started some games somewhere, and then they'll try him out as depth. David Andrews should be back at center, so I don't really see that as a need so much, but you might bring in a veteran that's played some games in case Andrews has health issues. That is my take on the Patriots, and I think I addressed pretty much everything there. So, and I just want to mention running back is interesting. I've seen some rumors like Melvin Gordon and stuff. That would be kind of cool, but like he's also friends with James White. But like Sony Michel, I think he had a bad year last year because he was playing, like he came back from an injury. So I don't know, he's interesting. You need to get production out of him next year or else you have to move on. I could see them moving on from Burkhead because of the cap number. Damian Harris is also there, who didn't really play last year but was drafted in the 3rd round. So we'll see if he gets some playing time next year. But I think they stay pat at running back, but we'll have to see. All right. So before we get to the Jets, let's go to the comments. Guys, if you haven't already, Gronk spiked the like button. I'll try to be a little bit quicker with the rest of these. Okay. How high do I go up for these comments? Busboy says, Brady, Hill, or Bridgewater are going to be the Pats next year. Hill. Taysom Hill is the starter. I think it's interesting. I think they could sign him, but I don't think he would be the starting quarterback. Ultra says, really starting to think Brady is leaving. 2 weeks ago, I was sure he'd stay. Now I think he's going to go to Tennessee. Kevin Durkant says, Brady's gone. Valana says, imagine San Francisco signing Brady and not winning anything and then back to the drawing board. Well, he'd be there for at least 2 years. So it's worth it, in my opinion. What else? Turtle says Brady to Tennessee. Then Tannehill starts over for him. Best place for Brady is with the Chargers. I don't see it. Maybe. It's now. I would put them in the same category as the Raiders. They're like an outside chance. Pittsburgh makes no sense because they have Ben. Unless he retires before the year, then that becomes very interesting. But no. Yeah, dream scenario, I'd like Odell. Ultra says Robert Woods. I think he'd be a very good fit for the Patriots, Robert Woods. Same as Cooper Kupp, if for some reason the Rams let him go. But I do feel like the Rams might have to trade one of their receivers. And it's not going to be Cooks, because they already signed him for big. Bro, I'm not really naming high caliber names. The Patriots have a pretty good amount of salary cap. Did you not see that? Look, $44 million. And I've heard that Tom Brady is going to sign, or I've read and heard with my ears that Tom Brady is going to sign for, he doesn't care. He wants weapons and he wants to win. That's what everybody keeps reporting. So the $30 million report I don't think was accurate. I think he would play for $20 million if it meant, okay, Odell's going to be on the team. Something like that, right? So I don't think he's actually going to cost a lot. But they definitely won't be able to re-sign Tooney because he's just going to make way too much money. Everyone else, they could, if they wanted to re-sign Tooney, they could. I just think they'd be better off signing a tight end or a wide receiver than re-signing Van Noy. You know? That's my opinion there. All right. Next team. Let's go with the New York Jets. Jets, Jets. All right, let's start off with the offensive line. So the offensive line for the Jets is a really bad unit. Last year, they were awful. They were one of the worst offensive lines in the league. They're arguably the worst. I think the only unit that was worse was probably Miami. Other than that, you could probably argue everybody else. They literally have 4 spots open on their offensive line, and you could argue 5 because Brian Winters at right guard is not a very good player. So let's just say all 5 of their offensive line positions are open for service. I think they're going to sign Conklin. That's been the report. I believe that's going to be the case, and I believe he will be their right tackle, but we'll have to see. Bulaga could be an option at right tackle as well. Darrell Williams could be an option. Vaitai could be an option. All of these tackles could be an option. Joe Tooney could be an option. I think Ted Karras is a fit at center. I think McGovern could be an option at center. Garland could be an option. Scherf if he somehow hits the market, which I don't think we're going to see that. But I think the Jets, how they're going to rebuild their offensive line is going to be a combination of free agent signings and draft. So probably their first round need is an offensive lineman. When you look at the free agency, though, they're definitely at least going to get one of these big names at tackle. Outside of that, they are going to try and sign a guard of some stature, and they're probably going to get a mid-tier center in free agency. So, I don't think Beachum, maybe he could be back, because he's been there for a long time. He's been a captain on the team. He's not awful, but he's not great. And he's older. So maybe you bring back Beachum for cheap and you draft a guy at left tackle and then you sign Conklin at right tackle. Khalil, he's gone. So you could sign like Ted Karras at center. We'll see what they do. There's a lot of options for them, but I definitely think they're spending big dough on the offensive line. And I think there's a lot of fits for them. Then you go edge. Edge is their biggest need on defense, which corner is another massive need on defense. But both of these positions, they're going to be in the market for players. I think Clowney is an option. I don't think he'll be the pick. I don't think he'll go to the Jets, but I do think he's an option. I think they could go after Fowler. A lot of people seem to think that's a good fit. I do think that's a good fit. And I think a lot of people are underselling Fowler right now. I think a lot of people are saying, oh, Aaron Donald got him 11.5 sacks. Fowler has been good before Aaron Donald, and Fowler has really played well in certain games with the Rams. I mean, he took it to the next level last year. I think he's actually a good player. Maybe he's not like great, but he's really good, he's young, he's super athletic, and he's a really good pass rusher, which is what the Jets need. He's not the greatest versus a run, but he's an excellent pass rusher. I think Judon would be interesting, but they might have to trade for him to get his services. I don't think they're going to go after like Kyle Van Noy. I think they could go after... they could bring back Jenkins, first of all. I should say that. There's a lot of names at edge. I've brought it up many times. One position they don't need is they don't need a linebacker because they're going to have CJ Mosley and Williamson back. That's one of the best duos in the league, and they have decent depth behind that. But adding a big edge rusher and then a corner, maybe you bring in Byron Jones. That's certainly at the top of the list. Chris Harris, I don't think would be a Jet option because I don't know. Maybe, but I feel like Harris is probably going to go to a team with an established playoff team. You know what I mean? Like a Texans, I could see like an Eagles, like a team that's regularly in the playoffs. I think that's where Chris Harris could go. I could see Bradbury for the Jets. That wouldn't be a bad signing. He's not like an elite corner, but he's a good one. Fuller, Roby, bringing back Poole is at the top of the list of their priorities. Waynes is someone I haven't brought up yet, but he could be an addition at corner for them. I do think that re-signing a couple of these guys at corner, specifically Poole, would be a good move. So the thing I like about the Jets defense is they're good in the middle of their defense. They're good at defensive line, stopping the run. They're good at middle linebacker, inside linebacker. They're great at safety with May and Adams. But they need corners and they need edge players, and that is where all the money and assets will be spent for the Jets. And the Jets have money to do so. So they will be playing with that money in free agency. And the other position is wide receiver. I put quarterback at 5th, not for the starting quarterback, but for the backup quarterback. You could also argue they need a backup running back. I think they'll draft a backup running back. They need a backup quarterback because if Sam Darnold has another mono situation or another injury, something like that, they need someone to back him up. So it would be smart to add a backup quarterback. But I don't know who. Maybe another situation where they had McCown, a veteran quarterback who could school Darnold in a way. That would be a good ad for him. Maybe they do decide to bring back like Simeon. I don't know. I don't think he's a good enough backup. I think you need a better one. Maybe they draft someone in the mid-rounds to push Darnold a little bit. Who knows? But I do think backup quarterback is definitely a need. Wide receiver, I like Crowder. I like Enunwa. Robbie Anderson said he wants to be back. I think they could use another receiver. I think when those three guys are playing, they actually have a pretty decent receiver group. But this is a draft where you could easily replace Anderson and maybe even get a better player than Anderson. So I think the best way to go with receiver for the Jets is if you want to bring back Anderson, sure, but make it not your top priority. Make offensive line, edge, and corner your top priorities, then Robbie Anderson, then just go to the draft and draft a receiver because I think that's the best way to go. But Crowder was productive. Enunwa is pretty good when he plays. So there you go. Jets out of the way. Next, we have the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore Ravens are, of course, a team that was expected to do big things. In the playoffs last year, they disappointed. So how did they get from a team that was the number one seed in the AFC to a potential Super Bowl winner? That's the question for them. So the Baltimore Ravens, of course, they have Lamar Jackson at quarterback. You don't need to worry about that. Mark Ingram at running back. They have Gus Edwards, who's a good little backup for them, who actually is more productive than a lot of people think and know. My top priority for them is edge, my top need. McPhee is a free agent, and Judon is a free agent. Those guys were their main starters last year. They also rotated in Bowser and Ferguson, who are okay. Now, what the Ravens typically do is they usually bring their younger players into more prominent roles when they let go of a name like Judon. They've done it in the past with Zadarius Smith. They did it last year, right? Judon, Zadarius Smith, similar seasons this year, like last year and this year for Smith and Judon. Could they move on from Judon? I think the smarter thing here would be franchise Judon and trade him because you want to get something better than a compensatory third-round pick, right? So trade Judon for like a second if you can. And the thing also with the difference between Zadarius Smith and Judon is the fact that the Ravens were so good last year that they might think, hey, if we can't trade Judon, maybe we'll just keep him for another year because we might win the Super Bowl this year if we have him. But if we don't have him and we can't replace him, that might be the Achilles heel of our defense. So if we let go of him, that would be a bad move, right? So because they're in win now mode with the way that Lamar played, and they didn't know Lamar was going to be that good before he played, right? And they didn't know they were in win now mode until MVP Lamar Jackson stepped foot on the field. So it's a different mind process this season. It's a different decision-making process. Linebacker, I think, is a really big need for them. I actually brought up Jamie Collins as a really good ad for them because I feel like he could both play on the edge and he could play inside linebacker because he could be really good in these blitz schemes that Martindale loves to run because he's super athletic. but they missed Mosley last year. I think that was a huge reason they lost the Titans. They didn't have a really good linebacker in the inside, and they didn't have a really good run-stuffing team. Typically, the Ravens are excellent versus the run, and that wasn't the case last year. I think part of it, they need to upgrade their defensive line. Michael Pierce is a free agent. I don't think they'll be able to bring him back. So maybe they draft somebody in the interior. It's not a huge, important position in the modern NFL, but just bringing back, like maybe they get a Snacks Harrison who would be excellent to replace him, who wants to play for a contender, is a little bit older, but still a great run defender. Interior defensive linemen out there, they could go after like Sue. They could go after Michael Brockers. They could go after Danny Shelton is a younger name. Ashawn Robinson would be a good, probably cheaper name that they could sign. Timmy Jernigan, bringing him back would be interesting. There's a lot of names in interior defensive line and edge, so the Ravens are right in their wheelhouse for guys. I think Kyle Van Noy is an interesting name to throw out there because I think he would perfectly fit their system if they get rid of Judon. I think other names you could see, like usually they typically like bigger guys, like Carl Nassib would be like the big outside linebacker. Maybe they want to get more athletic. Quite a lot of questions with the Ravens in their front seven because they have a lot of revamping to do. But I think receiver is another need. Marquise Brown is going to be their number one for the foreseeable future. I think they probably draft a receiver, but like a guy like Emmanuel Sanders, I think would come for cheap. I think would be an excellent number two and be a great underneath option for Lamar Jackson and would be great in all their little underneath routes that they do with the tight ends and all the little pick routes and things over the middle. That would be good. Like a guy like Randall Cobb would be interesting. Maybe they want to add more speed, so they add Philip Dorsett. I don't know. Robbie Anderson, maybe, if they want to go that route. I think A.J. Green would be open to playing for the Ravens, but I don't know if he would be, first off, costly is going to be, like, they don't have a ton of cap space. And then, second, I don't know if the Bengals are going to get rid of him. That's a different story. But, yeah, I think they probably sign one or two under-the-radar edge guys, and you're like, yeah, that makes perfect sense when they sign them. And then they sign, I think they might draft a linebacker. I don't think they're going to go out of their way to sign one. They might bring back the guys they had last year. I think really what the Ravens are going to be doing is they're going to be signing a lot of lower tier free agents. They don't really need corners. I don't think they need to look at safety very much. They traded for Marcus Peters last year. The only position I think they spend on is receiver and maybe guard. Other than that, I think defensive, and maybe a decent edge player because there's a lot of them. But other than that, I just feel like draft is the way to go for the Ravens for the most part because they're excellent at drafting and they're really good at finding those mid-tier free agents that really fit their scheme well, and they have great coaches. So we'll have to see what the Ravens do. I think they're another interesting team because they're a team very close to a Super Bowl, but they do have some holes that are noticeable. Edge, linebacker, and guard specifically are big-time holes on their team after Marshall Yonda retired. Bozeman overall is not very good, and we know they struggled versus the run last year, and they struggle to get after the quarterback when they don't blitz. So all those are big-time needs for the Ravens. We'll have to see how they address them. That's my idea for them. All right, moving on. The Cincinnati Bengals are next. Yes, I'm calling the Bengals because they were the worst team in football last year. Once they get back to being good, I will call them the Bengals. All right? Start off with their number one need, which is quarterback, which isn't on the list because I already assume they have one in Joe Burrow. Maybe they decide to shock the world and not draft him, but I'm going to say they do. Now, you trade Andy Dalton, most likely. I think a lot of teams will be looking to trade for him, so that should definitely be an option. And I don't know what he'll go for. Maybe like a third-round pick, depending on how desperate the team is. Maybe a second. But I assume it will be a third, maybe a fourth-round pick for Andy Dalton. You have Ryan Finley as a backup, so you don't really need to worry about that. Wide receiver, A.J. Green. Let's just start there. Tyler Boyd, John Ross. I've heard that John Ross could be a trade candidate, but I actually really liked the way he played last year when he was available to play. The problem with him is he gets hurt a lot. Tyler Boyd is there. They signed him. He's a good slot receiver. One of the better ones in the league. Had a really good last year. AJ Green, what do you do with him? In my opinion, you trade him. That's my opinion. I think you get draft picks back, whether that's a second-round pick, a third and a fourth maybe, whatever it is, or a third even, just a third. Trade him away. Unless Joe Burrow says, I'm not playing for you unless I get AJ Green, then that's the only way you keep AJ Green. If Joe Burrow is going to play for you without AJ Green being on the roster, you trade him. I think John Ross, Tyler Boyd, you can find. Erickson isn't terrible. Auden Tate isn't terrible. The wide receiver position isn't the biggest need for Cincinnati. It's not. Get rid of AJ Green. You played a whole season without him last year, and get picks back and start over because you need to fill the tackle position because Cordy Glenn is gone. You cut him. Bobby Hart is terrible. You signed him, but he sucks. Jonah Williams is good. Billy Price is good. Jonah Williams didn't play last year, but you're hopeful he's good. First rounder last year. You spent 2 first-round picks on guards. Those 2, good. Solidified at guard. I like it. I like the way you did this. Center. You could upgrade there. I don't think it's like a pressing need, but you could upgrade there for sure. That might be the draft, but if they want to sign like a Garland or a Finney, these guys that I think are good ads and good system fit. Specifically, I think Garland's a good system fit, and I don't think he would be a lot of money. You have good running backs. Joe Mixon's excellent. Defensively, Carlos Dunlap is still there and played really well last year. Geno Atkins is still there. Andrew Billings is a free agent. Carl Lawson, Sam Hubbard. I don't think edge is a big need, which is a good thing because that's a big money position. And you don't have a ton of cap. You're right in the middle of the league. Maybe you resign Billings. Maybe you go somewhere else in the interior defensive line. But you could add a couple depth players to the defensive line. I think where they spend their money is they spend maybe on corner, maybe on safety, but they're definitely going to get a linebacker. I don't know whether that's going to be Littleton, Schobert, Collins, Campbell, Kendricks. I don't know. Trevathan, Bradham, Grugier, who's it going to be? One of these guys they're going to pick up. 2 of these guys maybe, potentially. And they've shown that they will pay for linebackers in the past. And maybe they also spend a pick on it. But their linebacker position is very bad. I'd argue it's the worst in the league. So bringing in a Schobert, I think, would be excellent. That would upgrade your defense right away and give you a centerpiece in that defense. I think bringing back Denard is a huge thing. I would get rid of Kirkpatrick if you could. Then you have Denard, you have William Jackson, and maybe you sign another corner. Do you go out and spend big money on Byron Jones? I don't think they really have that money available, and the Bengals aren't really known for doing that, and I don't think Byron Jones would pick Cincinnati if he had the choice. But you could get a lower tier guy that would come there. Maybe you bring back Jonathan Joseph for another year, just a year as a fill-in. I don't know. Maybe you bring in Waynes, who would be a scheme fit there. Maybe you bring in Bradbury and just pay him money. Maybe you bring in a lot of these guys, like Breeland from Kansas City played pretty well at the end of last year, who would be a low-tier option. I feel like it played better than Kirkpatrick did. So I think they still have a lot of cap maneuvering to do, and I think they could. Tight end is another thing. They need tight ends. Tyler Eifert is gone. I don't think they're going to spend big money on a tight end, although they might be interested in one. I don't think their tight end position is awful right now as it stands, but that would probably be a position that you draft like a second, third round player at to complement your quarterback and your other weapons. But it's not a huge position in this offense, so I don't believe that they will particularly go after a tight end, but it could be like a low tier option. But tackle is the number one priority. Could spend big money there. Defensive line in the interior could be a priority, but linebacker is certainly going to be, and getting Denard back will be a priority as well. And trade AJ Green. Do it. Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns are next. The Browns, they really don't have a ton of needs, I would say. They have a very talented roster in certain areas. Do you decide to trade Odell? That's always the first question. I don't think you should. As much as I want to see him on New England, I don't think you should trade Odell. I just think First off, he was hurt last year. Second, it takes time. And I think just the overall way that the team was coached last year was not good. And I think Stefanski would love to have him in his offense. Now, tackle is the number one priority. Left tackle, right tackle, it doesn't matter. Tackle. Just period. Tackle. They need tackles. They need to block for Mayfield. Mayfield isn't this type of athletic quarterback who can escape pressure and do damage. He's not that type of guy. He's not that type of guy. So, tackle, end of story. Like, sign Conklin, sign Bulaga, sign... I think this is a team, though, that's different from some others, because I think they could be a contender in short order if they get good tackles. So maybe you sign Jason Peters. Maybe you sign Andrew Whitworth, because you know those guys are good. I know they're only going to be around for 1, maybe 2 years, but you sign them, and instantly you have a top-tier tackle, and you can make a run in the play. You can make a run to the playoffs. I don't really know if they're going to go after a lower tier option. And I don't think their draft capital is great. I don't exactly know 100%, but tight end, I've heard they could trade David Njoku for more cap space. I don't love it. You have a lot of cap space, and just the fit hasn't really been working out very well. Ricky Seals-Jones played pretty well for you last year. Running back position is excellent. Probably the best in the league with Chubb and Hunt. So you're good there. Edge position is interesting because Olivier Vernon could be cut. He could be a cap casualty. If you stay, it's a little bit better. If you go and move on from him, you definitely need to look at the edge position. There's a lot of guys here that you could sign. I think the Browns could be a team that's sneaky in position to pay an edge player. You know, whether that's Ngakoue and trade for him. You know, whether that's Fowler or Dupree. I don't think Dupree really fits the scheme very well. Maybe you could go with Addison or Lawson from Buffalo. You could go with like a veteran like Michael Bennett to bring some leadership to the locker room. Pierre Paul would be a good pass rushing option that you could use. Vic Beasley would be a younger player to take in. I think, though, defensively, what you really need to look at is interior defensive line as well. You also need to look at safety. I think they're going to address the safety position this offseason. I think everybody and their mom is linking Harris to the Browns, and I think that's a perfect fit. If Harris doesn't go there, I think Clinton Dix would be another great option for them. Those are two options that I like. Linebacker-wise, Schobert's out the building. You cut Kirksey. I think you could land a lot of these guys. Is Devondre Campbell an option for you? Is Bradham an option for you? Do you go after one of the lower tier names? Like a Woodyard would be a good veteran with experience, with good leadership. I think what I want to see from the Browns is go in the opposite direction from what they did last year. Don't go after the talent with the name and the big time personality. Go after the veterans with good leadership skills that can change this locker room. That would be what I would be looking for as the general manager of the Browns. I'd be looking to bring in leadership and guys with experience and guys that can help these younger players with the big-time personality, calm them down and get the most out of them. Jarrell McCoy would be a great option for that. Interior defensive line. Mike Daniels, Damon Harrison. A lot of these names in the interior defensive line would be good as well. So that is my opinion on the Browns. Believe I covered everything there. Right guard as well is a need, which didn't perform very well. Don't know if they'll be going and signing a free agent. I think that's more of a draft pick type of scenario, but I definitely see them spending money at tackle in free agency. Those are my thoughts on the Browns. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's start off with the edge position. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they're interesting because look at their cap space. They rank last. They're -2 cap space, and they have big-time free agents on the market. Bud Dupree and Javon Hargrave are both free agents, and both are going to likely leave. I mean, you might franchise tag Bud Dupree, I've heard, but other than that, I think Hargrave is just about out the building already, and I think he's going to make money because he's a good player. So, taking that into consideration, let's say that Bud Dupree leaves and Javon Hargrave leave. They both leave. I think you need to look at the edge position number 1. If Bud Dupree's back, your edge position's fine. But I think you need to look at some lower tier guys that are good in the 3-4. I think a Carl Nassib would be a perfect scheme fit. I think a Jordan Jenkins would be a perfect scheme fit. Who else would be a great scheme fit? Fackrell from the Packers, I think, would be good. Maybe like Addison from the Panthers. There's some names. Bruce Irvin. I think, though, what they're probably going to do is if they can't get one of those lower tier guys, they're going to draft an edge guy. And I think they'll probably bring in a couple veteran interior defensive linemen. Although I don't think they're bad in terms of like some of their depth guys they have there. Like Alu, Bugs. I think they have decent players that could replace Hargrave. I just don't think they'll have nearly the same impact as Hargrave. But I could see them bringing in a veteran interior defensive lineman, nose tackle type, because they don't cost a lot of money. And I think they could end up doing that. But corner, I think you're decent at. Not great, but you're set. Safety, I think, is an underrated need. Sean Davis is a free agent, and Terrell Edmonds has not been getting it done. That might be a draft need to compete with Edmonds, though, or a veteran lower-tier signing. Maybe like a guy like Jeff Heath or like Tavon Wilson, or maybe like a Carl Joseph. One of those type of strong safeties that could come in for a lower-tier number that could challenge. I don't think you're going to get rid of Vance McDonald at tight end. I think he's a good player when he has been. Receiver, you're great at drafting receivers. I think offensive line, you're actually pretty good there, but you are getting older. I think this is a spot where you draft at, you don't sign at, because a lot of these guys on the offensive line are older in free agency. Quarterback, I think, is a second next year need, not this year. If you could somehow get cap space, I think running back is open. Like, if you could somehow get Melvin Gordon, that would be an amazing signing, but I don't think... Like, personally, I think that would be a great signing because I think he would be a huge upgrade, and I think he would really benefit from this offensive line, and you would have a great balance on your offense. I just don't think James Conner's been getting it done. Jalen Samuels is okay as a backup, but not as a starter. I would really like to see them get a running back, but I don't think they have the money to get a free agent running back. Wide receiver, I like Juju, but he's not what we thought he would be. I really like Johnson, and Washington's okay. But I think adding another receiver somehow, probably in the draft, would be a great way to go. So the Steelers are hard to talk about because they don't have the current cap space. But when looking at their needs, they're a team that's very well set for next year. They just need to hopefully bring back Bud Dupree. But if they can't, bring back some under-the-radar veteran names that will play for cheap. This team is very talented. With Ben back, they should be in the playoff conversation. And they're one or two pieces away from being a real AFC contender if Ben is back to being Ben. So there you go, Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, let's get to the comments. I just finished another division. This has been fun, but also exhausting at the same time. Let's put the Colts up. So we'll get to the Colts in a sec here. I'm also kind of... Dez Bryant. That's a good one. That's a good one. I should actually say that. Dez Bryant to the Steelers. Do it! All right. Whew! I'm going to be on here all night. I'm up for it, though. It's already been an hour. And I've only done like 2 divisions. So, I think I'm going to release them as individual videos. After I do the AFC, I might have to take a short break and then come back because I'm going to be exhausted when I do this. All right. Any questions on anybody? Get your questions in right now. I think that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do 2 divisions just to speed it up, and then I'll take questions. Rick Badboy says Ravens need a number 1 receiver. Mick says Vikings trade for Ryan Finley. Did they actually? Or are you just saying that? Will Josh Gordon ever play again? No. Ravens might get Joe Schubert. That might be interesting. Schubert. Any chance the Bills can trade a backup tackle to the Bengals for a second rounder? They might take it. I hope not, just for the Bengals' sake. Kevin Orkan says Browns trade OBJ. Mo Mania says Patriots trade for OBJ and sign Antonio Brown. It really does seem like if Antonio Brown is playing again in the NFL, he will be playing with Tom Brady. So it does seem like that might be the move. And if somehow Brown would play for like $2 million for the Patriots and Tom Brady, that would be the best case scenario, because you don't just pick up Antonio Brown, let's say for $5 million. You don't find receivers like that for that much. Jonathan says the Broncos should get rid of Royce Freeman and try to trade for Saquon. Yeah, good luck with that, Jonathan. But, I don't think Saquon is just being traded, all willy-nilly. Yeah, guys, I'll be releasing these videos throughout the rest of the week. So if you missed what I said, probably just wait for those videos. What's up, Adam? I already did the Bills, yeah. Thanks for joining the stream, though. Which team is the least interesting in free agency? I think it's... Oh, that's a good one, actually. I think the Steelers are one of them because they don't have any money. I think the teams with not a lot of money. I think San Francisco... Actually, that's not true, because if San Francisco somehow makes a move for, like, Brady, or they have to re-sign their own guys, so in some ways they're interesting, but I feel like they're still good if they even lose all their guys. That's the thing with San Francisco. They're so loaded. Minnesota is not very interesting, but I could see them making a drastic change as well. I think every team is interesting, honestly. I guess the Saints aren't that interesting because we know Breeze is coming back, and they don't really have any huge needs. They might be like one of the least interesting teams. All right, let's get to the next division. So the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts have, again, a lot of freaking money. They have the second most amount of cap space this offseason, 86 million smackers to work with this offseason. The Colts, I think, are a team that could make big plays at a lot of positions, and I think that they are in a perfect position. I think they've actually nailed this, because they are perfectly aligned to address a lot of their needs through this year's free agency, specifically on the defensive line and at edge rusher, which is two of their top three needs outside of quarterback, right? So first off, I think Phillip Rivers is the answer at quarterback. I know some Colts fans are split on that. Some like it, some hate it. He's better than Jacoby. He has a good feel for the offense. He's still not a bad quarterback, but he's not what he used to be. I think in Indianapolis he would be better than the way he played with the Chargers last year. Now, if they don't sign him, I think Teddy Bridgewater would be a good add. I think the interesting one is Jameis Winston, because Winston has all the talent in the world, and if he was with an offensive line like the Colts and with an offensive coach like Frank Reich, who's really good with quarterbacks, I think that would be the best move. If they could get Winston and somehow turn him into an elite quarterback, that would be fascinating. But I do feel like that's a little bit too bold for what the Colts typically like. So Teddy Bridgewater is a good option if you want to go with more of a game manager type that you could get. He just doesn't have a huge ceiling. That's the thing I worry about Teddy Bridgewater. But if you could argue Teddy Bridgewater is just as good as Rivers, plus he's younger, and he might be just about the same amount. Do you try and steal Tannehill away from Tennessee? I doubt that, but I could see it because Tannehill is a good player. I don't think they're in play for Tom Brady, although I would think that they should be, because I don't think if they could get Tom Brady and a couple other pieces, I think they wouldn't be too far off from being a really good contending type of team. But again, this is a team that's built themselves off of drafting, built themselves off a young team with low contracts. They've done an absolute spectacular job building this team. I want to see them finally spend some money. That's where I really have my nitpick with the Colts, is I want to see them finally go all in. And I think this is the offseason to do that. So, edge and defensive line. If they could somehow trade for Chris Jones, that would be the best move they could potentially do. They have the money to do it. They have the draft capital to do it. If any team can do it, they can do it. Chris Jones would be an absolute defensive changing type of addition for their team. I don't think DJ Reader or Hargrave are scheme fits. I don't think Shelby Harris is a scheme fit. I don't think Leonard Williams is the type of player they want. A lot of these guys, like, maybe they go out and they sign, like, Quentin Jefferson is a little under the radar type of name, but he is a good player, played for Seattle last year. Do they go, like, with a Billings from Cincinnati who would work in a similar type of defensive scheme? I could see them signing Malik Collins, who played in the same type of defense in Dallas. For Eberflus in Indianapolis, they play like basically identical schemes in Dallas and Indianapolis. Covington, same thing, who's a good player, kind of under the radar. Vernon Butler, I brought up. I realize now that he actually was a dick to the Colts, so I'm going to stay out of that one. For the edge position, Ngakoue, I think, would be fascinating. I don't think the Jags would trade him to the Colts because they're franchising him, so that sucks, but he would be a perfect ad. I think they're in play for Clowney. I think they're the team that's sliding under there and saying, this is the thing, though. Do they want to take on Clowney because of his injury history? That's the only question I have there. I don't know. I don't think they will. But I don't think they'll be the team to sign Clowney, but I do think they'll be in the conversation. I think they could be in the conversation for Robert Quinn. I think they could be in the conversation for Jason Pierre-Paul. I think they could be in the conversation for Vic Beasley. I think they could be in the conversation for Shaq Lawson. Ogba, I could see as well. I could see a lot of these names, honestly. They fit. Fowler, maybe. It depends how much money he goes for. Linebacker-wise, they're pretty solid. I do see them like bringing in Sean Lee or a veteran type of linebacker to add to the depth there. Safety-wise, they could use a strong safety. Clayton Gathers seems to be gone. Or Geathers? I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He's a solid strong safety. I don't think he's going to re-sign. He's more of like a downhill in the box type of guy. I think honestly, it would be pretty cool if they went out and signed like a Devin McCourty type, but they already have Malik Hooker, who is their free safety. He's dealt with some injury issues in the past. Maybe they get like Trey Boston, who could play both. I think Adrian Phillips is the type of under-the-radar, really good player that they could get for not a lot of money that I think would be great at strong safety for them. A lot of the top names in free agency are free safeties. Do they go after like Carl Joseph, who's like a former first-round pick, who maybe they could turn into a better player in this scheme? Jeff Heath is a guy that played with Eberflus before. Maybe he goes there at strong safety. There's a lot of names. I do think they at least sign one of these edge guys at the top of the list. I think they sign one of these interior defensive linemen, and then all of a sudden you're looking at a Colts defense that probably will be pretty good. Maybe they draft somebody at safety. I think they're solid at corner. Maybe they could add somebody, but I don't think they're going to spend huge money at the position. Like, I don't think they're a team that will go after Byron Jones or Chris Harris because they're pretty good there. Like Desir, Moore, Rocky Sin. These guys are also Quincy Wilson. Pretty good, but not like excellent. They're going to re-sign Anthony Costanzo. I don't think they're going to sign a big name free agent. Did they bring back Devin Funchess at receiver? That's interesting, but they want to keep their offensive line together. I think they're decent at running back. Tight end, Eric Ebron's gone. Jack Doyle, though, is fine at tight end. Maybe they bring in a rookie for the backup. The thing is with receiver, like, they don't have a lot of money. The Colts have a lot of money. There's not a lot of receivers in this free agency that are going to go for big money. There's not a lot of big-time free agents. It's basically Cooper, Green, there's a drop-off, then it's like Anderson, Sanders, Perryman, these type of guys. I think they probably, they drafted one pretty high last year, and I think they want to see what they can get out of him in Campbell. They have T.Y. still, and I think he's going to stick around. He's like a legend in Indianapolis. But another name, like another guy to bring in, maybe they try and go for like a Robbie Anderson or a Demarcus Robinson. Maybe they bring in Nelson Aguilar, who used to play with Frank Reich in Philadelphia. So those are some options. Those are some names for Indianapolis. But I'm really intrigued by Indianapolis because I finally want to see them spend some darn money in free agency, and I think they will. I think at the end of free agency, my prediction is the Colts defense will be a lot better, and they will have their quarterback. Those are my two predictions for the Colts. The Texans. The Texans are such a weird team because they are a playoff team that has so many holes. Like, for a playoff team, they have a ridiculous amount of holes on their roster. And it all starts with corner. I said it in my one free agency signing for every team video. Sign a corner or I can't watch you anymore. Chris Harris, Byron Jones. I would love them to sign Byron Jones. Please sign Byron Jones. If you don't, Chris Harris is a great option. He's a win-now option, and I think it works. Bradbury, Fuller, bring back Roby, Poole, Denard, Waynes, Logan Ryan, Jimmy Smith. Any of these guys. Bring in 1, 2, 3 of these guys. Okay? Really, you need 2. So, in my opinion, you need 2. So, if you re-sign Roby, let's say, I thought played well for you last year. Maybe you make him your number 2 and you sign Chris Harris. Or you make him your number 1 outside guy. You sign Chris Harris to be your slot. Jonathan Joseph will come back for pennies on the dollar if you really want him back. But you still have Garyon Connolly, who played better in Houston than he did in Oakland. You have Lonnie Johnson Jr., who's a depth option. Safety-wise, you're good, I think. I think Gibson is solid. I think Justin Reed is really good. He's going to be very good. Inside linebacker, you're good. Don't worry about that. J.J. Watt, you're excellent. But edge position, Whitney Merciless, you resign. You need another guy. You lost Clowney. I think your pass rush was underwhelming, specifically versus Kansas City in that playoff game. You need to add somebody there. And this is a Romeo Crennel defense. Jordan Jenkins, Marcus Golden, Bud Dupree could be an option. The Texans have a lot of money. They could go out there and make a play for Fowler. They could make a play for Matt Judon. Probably not because he's going to be tagged and then traded. Kyle Vinoy, maybe. Nassib. Who else? Sheard could be an option. So there's a lot of edge guys that they could go after. I don't think Clowney's going to be one of them. Shaq Barrett will be back with his team. But edge is an underrated option that I would not be shocked if the Texans went out there and spent some money on that. Guard, I think, will be a draft because they've already spent so much money on Laramie Tunsil. But they could... See, I think they're going to give Titus Howard one more year because they just drafted him last year in the first round, but he didn't play well. So I put it as a need, maybe as a backup need, but guard is a need. I don't think center's a need. I think Martin's solid, but guard is certainly a need. Both guards. So do you go after Joe Thuney? I think this is a team that's kind of like under the radar, because if you have Thuney and you have Tunsil, that might be the best left side in the entire league on the offensive line, and I'm sure Deshaun Watson would love that. Receiver continues to be in the conversation for the Texans, but I actually think running back is a bigger need. I think Kenyon Drake would be an awesome running back for them if they wanted to go after that way. You could bring back Hyde, which I think is certainly an option, and of course you have Duke Johnson. I think the Texans are a good team. We'll see what they do in the free agency, and I could potentially be saying they are super contender. But if you sign an edge player that I like, if you sign some corners, just sign I don't care who it is. If it's Joe Blow off the street, I will be happy. Sign corners. I want to see you guys be able to defend the dang pass in 2020. Please. I'm begging the Texans. Lamar Miller, do you bring him back? I don't know. A.J. McCarron, free agent, do you bring him back? Backup quarterback. Because you never know. Deshaun Watson is a guy that could get hurt anytime now because he's that type of quarterback. DJ Reader, I think, will be gone. We'll see if they try to make a play to bring him back. In that case, defensive line would be a need. But I do think do you bring back Covington? Do you bring in Snacks Harrison? Do you bring in Sue? Do you bring in Brockers? All of these, Leonard Williams, these guys are all fits for your defense. Danny Shelton is a fit. A'Shawn Robinson is a fit. Timmy Jernigan. All these type of guys. Pennell, if he doesn't sign back with the Chiefs, is a fit. So all those guys would work. Hargrave would be a fit, depending on his price. Shelby Harris would be a cheaper option than Reader. He's a fit as well. Those are all options for the Texans. Texans are fascinating because they're a very good team that was in the playoffs last year, but need a lot of players, a lot of big ticket type of positions. Edge, corner, offensive line. Next, Titans. Tennessee Titans are up next. The Titans, I like the Titans roster the way it's constructed right now. I think that they do need to really look at first and foremost right tackle. Because I think Ryan Tannehill is the option at quarterback, which is number one need on my list. This is assuming that Tannehill is a free agent, which he is. You haven't made a move on him yet. He played really well for you. My opinion, you franchise tag him this year. See how well he plays. And if he plays great again, then you sign him long term, and then you reward him. But personally, you don't Blake Bortles this. You don't go out of your way to sign this guy. You don't get too antsy and Jared Goff it and sign him to a long-term, too much money type of contract. That's my opinion. I franchise tag him if you're not going to sign Tom Brady, which is a different conversation into itself. If you do sign Tom Brady, the one thing that Tom Brady will bring is free agents from other teams at a lower cap rate. That is an option if you're looking to win the Super Bowl this year, which I think the Titans are. They just made the AFC Championship game. Surprising, nonetheless, they did make the AFC Championship game. So I think Tannehill is not too much worse than Tom Brady at this point, and some people would argue he's better. I don't know if that's the case. I still think Brady's better, and I think Brady would give them a better chance to win in 2020, but Tannehill would give you the better chance to win in 2022 because Brady will probably be retired. So you got to weigh those options. Of course, you have to sign Derrick Henry. I didn't put it as a need because I feel like he's going to be back no matter what. That's just my opinion. And I don't think a lot of teams outside of Tennessee are worthy or willing to pay him a lot of money because he's a running back, and teams don't want to pay running backs a lot of money. And I don't think the Titans should pay Derrick Henry a lot of money, even though he was the best damn player in the playoffs last year outside of maybe Patrick Mahomes, right? He's a phenomenal player. He's a great running back, and he's a beast in January and December. But you have to factor in he's a running back. Zeke hasn't really worked out the way that the Cowboys have wanted to, and that was the best case scenario so far. Gurley hasn't worked out, right? I'm missing a lot. Le'Veon Bell hasn't worked out. A lot of these guys are Devontae Freeman. Running backs that you've paid after their rookie contract have not really worked out because running backs go downhill so fast. So the Titans need to be very, very cautious with that decision. I think the move for the Titans is to let Jack Conklin go, re-sign Dennis Kelly, and then put Kelly at right tackle. That's my opinion. I think you could also upgrade right guard. That might be a move. Damn, Toronto. You hear this? That's the sirens. Because the Tennessee Titans, that's the warning, Titans. Don't sign Derrick Henry to huge money. You heard it here first. All right? The sirens out my window are telling you don't sign Derrick Henry to huge money. So, Conklin, I think, leaves. Dennis Kelly, back. Ben Jones, good at center. Roger Saffold, good at left guard. Lawan, great at left tackle. Right guard, though, Nate Davis could be upgraded. So I don't think they're going to be a team to throw huge money at free agents in free agency, but I do think they could draft at right guard. Receiver, you're good. I don't think you have a need at receiver. I think you get Tajay Sharp can leave. I think receiver, you're fine. Maybe you draft someone, but I don't think it's a free agent need. Now, interior defensive line, you're good. Jarrell Casey's still there. Jeffrey Simmons, I think, could be a stud you got in the first round last year. Daquan Jones is still very reliable at nose tackle. Maybe you add some depth. In that case, there's some options to do so. Maybe you bring in Derek Wolfe or Danny Shelton or Damon Snacks Harrison, Brockers, who will probably be too expensive. Sue could be an option, I feel like. Jernigan, Pannell, these 3-4 base big boy type of guys. Onyemata is an interesting one. Those guys are all options if you wanted to add some beef to the defensive line, but they might be too pricey. You're looking at the under, probably a little bit underneath that tier. Maybe like Davison, somebody like that. Linebacker, you're good. Edge, I think you could add a player. You don't really have any crucial free agents on defense outside of Logan Ryan, who was a great slot corner for them last year. He can cover, he can blitz, he's extremely intelligent. Honestly, if you re-sign Logan Ryan, slot corner and safety, he's good there. But he's not I don't think he's as good as he was in man-to-man earlier in his career. Like, I think in New England he was better in terms of his pure coverage, but he's just such an asset in terms of the blitzes, in terms of the zone, all that sort of stuff. He's just so smart. He's so, he makes so many plays, and he's perfect in Tennessee. And I honestly think he'll take a discount to come back to Tennessee because he loves it in Tennessee, and he's a leader there, and he's a great player for them. So I think Logan Ryan will probably stay, but I do think corner's an underrated need because I think they could get rid of Malcolm Butler. I wouldn't be shocked based on his contract, because he was hurt last year, but having him back would be massive for them. Tremaine Brock played great for them in the playoffs. He could be back on a low-term contract. He's older, though. Adoree Jackson played really well. He's their best corner. Of course, you have Byard and Vaccaro at safety. You're good. I think you re-signed Vaccaro recently. So what I'm looking at for the Titans are edge. I think Matt Judon, would be the ideal guy. I think Kyle Vinoy would be a good signing. I think Bud Dupree would be a good signing. I think Pierre-Paul would be a good signing. I think Mario Addison would be a good signing. I think Bruce Irvin would be a good signing. All those type of guys, I think, fit this defense. And I've gone over a lot of these Vrabel, New England, Baltimore, all these type of defenses that like these edge players that are linebacker, edge, blitzers, schemers. They're good in every sort of way. They're better versus the run usually than they are pass rush. Cameron Wake, I think he's back again this year, but he was hurt last year as well. That would be a big addition to their pass rush. Overall, Tennessee, as long as they bring back a quarterback, which I'm sure they'll do that, they address the right tackle. I think if they add a couple pieces to that defense, and they bring back Derrick Henry, they're once again in that playoff conversation for the AFC. And those are my thoughts on the Titans. I'm fascinated to see what they can do to bring themselves from a good team to a really, really great team in the 2020 free agency. Jacksonville Jags. The Jacksonville Jaguars. I think, honestly, the Jags, man, I think they're not going to have a good season. I don't want to be depressing here. I think the Jags roster has taken such a huge hit from just a couple of seasons ago where I would have argued they were the best roster in the league. And I feel so bad for Jags fans because they should have won the Super Bowl. I mean, in 2017, they should have won the dang Super Bowl. And if it wasn't for Blake Bortles and Tom Brady and Danny Amendola, they would have won the dang Super Bowl. I think they go into the Super Bowl. If they had a better quarterback versus the Eagles, they would have won. But that's just my opinion. Anyways, I'll leave that opinion for another day and another video. The Jags. People are saying they need receivers. Dead wrong, they don't need receivers. D.D. Westbrook, DJ Chark, Marquise Lee, Keelan Cole, Chris Conley. 5 receivers deep. Maybe none of them are excellent receivers. DJ Chark looked pretty darn good last year. And D.D. Westbrook's pretty dang good. I think a lot of teams would like to have these receivers. If you're looking at a weapon to add, it's tight end. I think Austin Hooper would be a great ad. I think he'd fit in very well to this offense and what they want to do. And I think if you want to get the best out of Minshew, adding a tight end over the middle of the field would be a good idea. I think Tyler Eifert or Jordan Reed would be good ads for them. I think Eric Ebron would be a good ad for them. I think all these tight ends would be very nice adds to this offense, and I think would give them that extra weapon that they're looking for. I do think their offensive line needs a lot of work. Andrew Norwell and Brandon Linder are both excellent players. Their tackle position, I am willing to give them a little bit more time. Specifically Taylor, who I think needs a little bit more time because he just got drafted in 2019. But Cam Robinson, it's coming up on time for you to play better, bro. He's had ups, he's had downs. I don't think they're going to be able to sign anyone big at this position because they don't have a lot of cap space. But just because they've put some resources into these players, and that's the depressing part. AJ Cann, that could be the position you upgrade. So do you go out there and sign a guard? Do you sign a Glasgow? I don't think you can afford a Tooney, but maybe one of these second-tier guards for Jacksonville would be nice, or potentially that's a draft pick. Overall offense, when you're talking about free agency, it's going to be tight end that they really address, and backup running back. I think that's a position I haven't really talked about a lot in these previews, but I think Chris Thompson would be great for them. I think Washington would be great for them. DeAndre Washington. I sometimes say Dwayne by accident. DeAndre Washington, great pass catcher from Oakland. I think would fit this offense perfectly because John Gruden, Jay Gruden, same thing. Chris Thompson played with Jay Gruden. I think that's the most logical one to back up Leonard Fournette next year. Then we look at defense. Josh Allen's an absolute stud. Yannick Ngakoue is gone, but you have Allen and Campbell. You're pretty good at edge, and still Smoot is a good player. I think edge-wise, you're good. If you want to draft a guy, or if you want to sign a very low-tier guy that you think has potential, go for it. I think the real spot on the defensive line in the interior is where you might want to spend some money. So Darius is a free agent because you had to let him go for cap space reasons, but you have the cap to bring him back if you like. So then you have Darius, you have Taven Bryan, who's a really good player. I think went way under the radar, first rounder in 2018, and played a good season last year. Avery Jones is okay, solid, but you could add somebody there in the interior that could make a difference. I think Quentin Jefferson would be good at. I think Mike Daniels would be a good ad for you. I think John Phillips from Buffalo would be interesting. I think Jaron Reed would be interesting. All these type of guys. I don't think you need to go out and sign like a Hargrave or a Reader because I don't think they really fit the defense, and I don't think they're going to make too much money. So I think like a second tier interior defensive lineman would be wise, but I think what the Jags want to do is they want to get linebackers and they want to get corners. I think those are the big needs on defense. Overall, I think corner-wise, they really have nobody that I look at and say, that's a stud. They have nobody. They lost Jalen Ramsey. They traded A.J. Bouye. And that was because they needed cap, and they couldn't afford to pay Jalen Ramsey. It doesn't make any sense for them to sign Byron Jones, because if you're not going to pay Jalen Ramsey, you're not going to pay Byron Jones. So my idea would be sign a second-tier guy. Maybe sign Trey Waynes, a long corner that fits the scheme well. Maybe you sign Bradley Roby, aggressive type corner. Jimmy Smith would be an interesting one. Bashad Breeland, potentially lower-cost free agent. Darqueze Dennard if you want to go with a slot type of guy. Those are the options I really see. Another one that's interesting is like Morris Claiborne, who played well last year for the Chiefs but didn't play a lot. That could be a low-cost option. Linebacker, there's a lot of options that I think would fit this defense. Devondre Campbell is first and foremost the guy that I think they should target because I think he's a stud, and I think he would really help this defense. Of course, Telvin Smith retiring didn't help. I don't think he's coming back anytime soon. You could correct me if I'm wrong. Miles Jack is good. I think they believe in Quincy Williams and in Leon Jacobs, but I don't think they're like great options. So just even adding one guy, like whether that's, if you want to go with Schobert, I don't think they have the money to do so, but like Martinez, Kendricks, Trevathan, Bradham, any of these guys. But I think the number one guy is Campbell. I think he would fit this defense perfectly. And I think that's the target. I think that's the guy if I'm the Jags. Safety is interesting. Ronnie Harrison, I think, didn't play very well last year, so they could add a safety. It's definitely a need for them. It's not one of their top priorities. Wilson played pretty well, underrated player. They could go with a strong safety in free agency, but there's not a lot of great strong safeties in free agency. There's a lot of free safeties, but maybe like Clinton Dix would be an option. Those are the needs for the Jags, and that's how I feel about the Jags. Let me know what you think about the Jags. Okay. The AFC West. It's time for the AFC West. The Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos, I think, are a fascinating team for a number of reasons because they finished the season very strong last year. They lost a lot of games last year that were very close in score. They lost a lot of one-score games. I think a lot of people look at them as a team on the rise, a team that could be a potential playoff team this year. The thing is, though, AFC West, very competitive. That's Mahomes' division. The Raiders are only getting better. Chargers may take a step back, losing their quarterback, but you never know. They're a very talented team as well. So it looks like they have the quarterback. Drew Lock, at least for this year, is your guy for the future. Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman you have handled at running back. That's a good combination. Tight end, I really like Noah Fant from what I saw last year. He's a great athlete, and I think that was a good pick. Then you have good depth at tight end as well. I don't think you're really looking there. I think offensive line is really first and foremost offensively where you want to target. Garrett Bowles in 2017 was a first-round pick. Hasn't really worked out to his full potential, but I don't think they're ready to move on quite yet at that position. Dalton Reisner was a second-round pick in 2019. I thought was a good pick. I think he'll be the starter again at left guard. Now, Connor McGovern is a free agent. They have the money to re-sign him if they so choose, but they might choose to move on for bigger needs, for more pressing needs than center. Because center, given the scheme, given the team, it's not a position that all teams love to pay. And I could see the Broncos moving on from McGovern. He's the best free agent center on the market this year. I think a good low-cost guy that would fit the scheme very well would be Ben Garland from San Francisco, who plays in the exact same offense and I think would fit well there. Well, actually, they changed their offensive coordinator, Pat Shurmur, but still very similar. Not exactly Kyle Shanahan-esque, but they run similar concepts, so I think Garland would work at center, but Karras is another option as well, who's less than McGovern, but still a good option, starting caliber center in free agency. Ronald Leary is going to be gone at right guard. Maybe they go after, Glasgow at guard or maybe Tooney, but they have the money to do it if they wanted to. And but the thing is with the Broncos, they've been very into drafting offensive linemen. Juwan James, though, they signed at right tackle, which I thought they overpaid, but he's there nonetheless, and he's a starting caliber tackle. I think they could target guards. The thing is, though, I don't see a lot of great offensive linemen in free agency. And I think they're better off drafting them. But there are lower cost guys that you could bring in than Ronald Leary, who was overpaid ever since you signed him from Dallas. So using that cap elsewhere would be a good idea. Now, defensively is where I'm very intrigued by Denver's free agency, because I think this is really where they're going to spend their money in free agency. Their entire defensive line, their entire starting defensive line are free agents. You're talking about Shelby Harris, Derek Wolfe. These guys are all free agents. I think Derek Wolfe will be back. I think Shelby Harris will be gone. I think Derek Wolfe wants to play for Denver, and I think he will be back. And he's kind of getting up there in age, so I don't think he'll cost a ton. But Shelby Harris, I think, is going to cost too much. And the reason why I say he'll cost too much is because Shelby Harris doesn't play a lot of snaps. He's a big guy. He's more of a run defender than anything else. And he plays like 60% of the snaps. And I'm not willing to pay a nose tackle $12 million, $10 to $12 million to only play 60% of the snaps in my defense. Maybe he plays more elsewhere, so that's why you pay him more. He's a good player. I would rather spend it, if I'm spending money, big money on a defensive lineman, interior defensive lineman, I'm going after DJ Reader. I'm going after Javon Hargrave. These guys I feel like are better than Shelby Harris, although both of those, Harris is good. I'm not trying to take anything away. But both these guys are more versatile. They can pass rush. They can stop the run. They can do a lot of things. And they can do more than Harris. And I think they're more worth their buck than Harris is, in my opinion. Now, there's a lot of other guys that you could sign as well. Michael Brockers, I think, fits this defense perfectly. I think Leonard Williams fits this defense if you want to spend more money there. Danny Shelton's an interesting one for nose tackle. Who else? Onyemata, Covington, I think could be interesting. Just looking at my top 25 for the defensive line. Billings from Cincinnati, maybe. He's a bigger guy. I'm thinking big beef, because that's what Denver likes and Fangio likes in his interior defensive line. Regardless, though, this is a position that Fangio typically gets the best out of. So honestly, if I was Denver, I'd sign maybe one big name or one guy to a lot of money on this defensive line. But I'd rely on Fangio to be able to coach up guys that you think have potential or draft picks. Because he's good at scouting those type of players. He's good at getting the best out of those type of players. And I'd spend money elsewhere. You don't need to worry about edge because you have Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. You could add like a smaller name if you wanted to just for depth, which I don't think would be a bad idea because Chubb got hurt last year. But linebacker is the one that I think is fascinating because Fangio loves linebackers. He loves linebackers. Like everywhere he goes, he gets the best out of them, and he usually has good ones, right? So you're talking about San Francisco, Navarro Bowman, Patrick Willis. You're talking about Chicago. You're talking about a long lineage of linebackers playing at elite levels in his defense. So I could see Denver going after Littleton. I could see Denver going after Schobert. I could see Denver going after Campbell. I could see Denver going after Kwiatkowski, who was a linebacker for him in Chicago. Trevathan, who was a linebacker for him in Chicago. I think he'll only go after one, though, because I think he likes at least one of Josie Jewell and Josie Jewell and Todd Davis. So one of those guys will be starting an inside linebacker, but the other one I think will be an upgrade there at inside linebacker. Now, corner is fascinating because Chris Harris is gone. You brought in AJ Bouye from Jacksonville. He's going to be your number one guy on the outside. You have Kareem Jackson at strong safety, who can play a little corner if you like. Justin Simmons, big time priority. I assume he's going to be back probably by franchise tag and then a long-term deal after that. But he's a huge priority because he's an excellent player that I don't think gets enough recognition. Very good at free safety, but you have your safety combination there between Simmons and Jackson. And Jackson, like I said, can play corner at times. Bryce Callahan, I think you're looking to get better play out of him next year. And I think with a better pass rush, by having Chubb back, he'll play better just by virtue of that. But I could see them adding another corner in free agency if that's Amukamara, who used to play for Fangio in the past. Or maybe a Roby or a Denard or a Waynes. One of these mid-tier type of guys I think would be a great add. But I think the Broncos are going to have a really good defense because I know they're going to spend money on defense in free agency. They still have the draft. I'm looking to see what they really do on offense past the defensive point to see how much potential it has. But with Sutton, with Lindsey, and with Fant, you have the foundational pieces. It's just about adding extra pieces around them. So I would not actually be surprised if they added another receiver. Even though there's not a lot in free agency, maybe a lower tier guy to add into the mix of Sutton and Hamilton. I don't think they have a lot of Patrick. I don't think they have a lot of great options there, but maybe you're looking to the draft because it's such a loaded draft class for wide receivers. So that's my opinion on the Broncos. Offensive line, defensive line, corner. Let's get it done, Broncos. Let's get back to the playoffs. Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl champions. Let's talk about them. So obviously they need a quarterback, right? Because Patrick Mahomes, he's just not getting it done. You know, he sucks. Hopefully you guys took that as a joke. Patrick Mahomes is there. And with Patrick Mahomes means two things, all right? First, you have an absolute freaking stud at quarterback who's going to win you a lot of games without having to have a lot of great players around him. And two, he's going to get players to come to the team because he's Patrick Mahomes. He's MVP last year, Super Bowl MVP, and Super Bowl champion, which has not been done, I don't think, ever at his age. So, damn, Patrick, stop chasing my boy Brady at this point, honestly, for the GOAT position. I mean, if there's anybody, there's side rant. Anybody that has a chance, it's Mahomes, honestly. So, let's look at what the Chiefs need. So, obviously, I have my needs there. They have a maneuverable amount of cap space to sign some needs that they have. But the fascinating part and the interesting thing that I'm going to look at is they still need to franchise tag Chris Jones. So that's first and foremost, what do they do with Chris Jones? I think they franchise tag him, and I think they keep him around for one more season. They could trade him, but if I'm the Chiefs, I'm doing everything I can to keep Chris Jones around for one more season and potentially into the future, right? Because he is, other than Aaron Donald, the best damn interior defensive lineman in the NFL. There's nobody better outside of Aaron Donald. So I'm keeping him because he can transform a defense, change games, and he changes the game for that defense just the way Mahomes does on offense for them. So he is crucial for their future. And he's young. He seems to be a good teammate. And he makes freaking plays. And I would have argued he was the Super Bowl MVP. Just saying. If you have to trade him, though, I'm trading him next year. I'm trying to repeat this year and trading him next year if I have to. Then again, you could look at it as maybe we can trade him for his value now. Maybe they have to trade him this offseason. That's an interesting question and an interesting dilemma. Let me know what you think about that. I think Pinnell will be back. Ogba, I think they would like to have back, but I just don't think they have the money to do so. But he was good for them when he played. Alex Okafor will be back from injury. I think that's solid. I think they'll keep him. Frank Clark was great, and they obviously signed. I think Nandi is going to be good next year. Better, I should say. He was pretty good last year once he got a hold of things as a rookie. Passanio and Speaks are solid backups. I don't think they're ever going to be like starters, but I don't think they need to be. The only question is, if you move on from Jones, what happens in the defensive line, right? So if you move on from Jones, there are some options that you could go to at defensive line. So you could bring in Snacks Harrison to fill the void. You could bring in Jerron Reed as a pass rushing type instead of the... You could bring in Hargrave as a pass rushing type. You could bring in Jarrell McCoy, who's looking to win. You could bring in Sue. You could bring in Daniels. These veteran guys that will want to play for the Chiefs. Phillips from the Bills is a pass rushing type if you're looking for that type. I don't exactly know what the Chiefs will do if they move on from Jones, but those are some names that I would fancy. Linebackers, I think, are a need for them. I think Littleton would be amazing, but they don't have the money to do it. I could see Jamie Collins playing for them if they were willing to pay a decent amount, but I think Collins would probably get the same amount from New England as he does from Kansas City, so I don't really see him leaving New England, unless Brady leaves, to Kansas City. I think Michael Kendricks would be a really good athletic piece for the linebacking group, which I think they need athletes at linebacker. That would be a good one for not a lot of money. Kwiatkowski would be one. I think Trevathan can still play. I think Bradham would be a good one. All those guys are potential possibilities. I think Sean Lee actually would be not a bad ad. Grugier Hill is a super athletic linebacker from the Eagles. All those guys are a possibility. I think they move on from Ragland. I just don't think that they like him anymore. Like, in terms of, he's just big, he's slow, I don't think he's what they need. Damian Wilson played well for them last year, and Anthony Hitchens started to play better. At corner, they don't really have anybody on their roster outside of Ward, who might be their best one. Fuller is probably going to move on because he's going to get money elsewhere. Breeland could be back for cheap. Claiborne, same thing, could be back for cheap. Safety, they're good because Matthews is a stud and Thornhill is turning into a stud. But corner, I think like a guy like Roby or Poole or one of these younger names, Jimmy Smith would be interesting for them. All these guys that can play man-to-man. I think Chris Harris would play for the Chiefs. But he might be too much money. I think what they should do is bring back Breeland, have Ward, and then sign somebody else. I don't know who it's going to be exactly. Maybe it's Jimmy Smith. Maybe it's Roby. Maybe it's Denard. Maybe it's Waynes. Maybe it's Logan Ryan. I don't know. One of these guys in free agency, and you draft probably one in the later rounds. They don't have any high draft picks. Left guard is also fascinating for them because there's not a lot of big names. I think they bring back Wisniewski. That's my guess. And they might draft somebody to back him up. That would probably be the safe play. Do they end up moving on from Sammy Watkins? That's another option that they have to consider. He's a lot of money. He might not be worth all that money, although he played well in the stretch run there. Demarcus Robinson might be gone as well. But they have Hardman, they have Hill. Those are the two foundational pieces. Maybe you bring in other receivers. I think receiver is an option for them. Obviously, you have Kelsey at tight end. Do you bring in a smaller, maybe you bring in Nelson Aguilar for the slot. Maybe you bring in Philip Dorsett for another speed guy. I don't know. There's a lot of guys. Rashard Higgins is an under-the-radar type of guy. So there's options for them at receiver as well. But again, this draft has amazing receivers. The Chiefs, they're just looking to repeat. They're looking to be great again. They'll definitely be in the conversation. And I'm sure that they'll make the right decisions on their way there because they've been trustworthy in that regard. They want to win. They're all the way in on winning with Patrick Mahomes right now. And it seems like Mahomes is also all the way in and not rushing getting his contract done. So that's great. The LA Chargers. Let's start off with quarterback. Phillip Rivers is gone. Okay? They need a quarterback. Tyrod Taylor's their backup, could be their bridge guy. I think will be their bridge guy. They have Easton Stick, who has the greatest hockey name in the history of football players. Running back. Melvin Gordon's gone. They just re-signed Austin Eckler. I love Austin Eckler. And Austin Eckler is probably the most underrated running back in the NFL. And last year I was saying, this guy, Austin Eckler, might be better than Melvin Gordon, and nobody believed me. And thank you, Austin Eckler, for proving me right. Good work. Okay. Wide receiver, I think you're good. You have your foundation with Allen and Mike Williams. Both excellent players, and I think Williams is only going to get better. And Keenan Allen's a stud. You could improve at your number 3. You lost Tyrell Williams last year. Travis Benjamin is moving on. But again, this draft has the best receiver group in like 20 years. So if you want a receiver, just add one in the draft. Offensive line-wise, you really need tackles. Like outside of drafting a quarterback, which I think is what they're going to do, unless they sign Tom Brady. Which, sorry, Chargers fans, I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't. I don't want to get into really why, but I just don't see it happening. Quarterback, you're probably going to get like Herbert in the draft, which I'd be happy about because I like Herbert. Tyrod Taylor, and then you build from there. So how do you protect Tyrod Taylor or Herbert next year? Let's just say, for example. Well, you brought in a guard already. You brought in Trey Turner. And I think that was a solid trade. He's young. He's going to be a foundational piece on the offensive line for seasons to come. You have Mike Pouncey at center. You're good there. Now, I think you could bring back Schofield. You have Feeney as well, but I think Schofield's gone thanks to the addition of Turner. So you have Feeney, Turner, and Lamp at guard. Those three, I think Lamp and Feeney will compete for the left guard position, and Turner probably at right guard. Either way, flip it. Guards, you could play either or. It doesn't really matter too much. Tackle is the big need. You could see the Chargers try to compete for a tackle. Whether, it depends, honestly. Like, do they try and go after a veteran name without a veteran quarterback? Because are the Chargers without signing a Tom Brady? Like, with Tyrod Taylor, nobody believes the Chargers are going to go to the Super Bowl with Tyrod Taylor and Justin Herbert. I'm just sorry. It's not going to happen. Maybe you make the playoffs. Like, I could see it because the team is so talented. But without that top name, top 10 quarterback, you're not going to the Super Bowl in Patrick Mahomes' division. I'm sorry. Darrell Williams is an interesting, underrated name for you. Gilbert, Beachum, Ramers, Fant, Affetti, Kelly. All of these type of names. Ryan Kelly from Tennessee, Affetti, George Fant from Seattle, Ramers, Gilbert, Dotson from Tampa Bay. All these guys could be had for not a lot of money, like a decent contract, but not top-tier market money that would start for you and be better than both Sam Tevi and what you have at left tackle because Okung's gone. But I do believe the Chargers will draft one of their tackles. They seem comfortable playing Tevi at right tackle if they need to, but I would think that and Vaitai is also another option there at right tackle if they want to go there. Hunter Henry should be back. I think they're going to franchise him, so I'm not going to worry about tight end as a need. Now, defensively, they're pretty good. I mean, they have Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa signed, sealed, and delivered. They have Nwosu at edge, who's pretty solid and can also play linebacker. Justin Jones, Brandon Mebane, and Tillery interior is where you need an upgrade. I've already suggested like 400 times Quinton Jefferson from the Seattle Seahawks. I think he would be a perfect addition. I think Phillips from Buffalo would be a good addition. I think Jerron Reed, also from Seattle. I think to add some beef, maybe a guy like Sue would go back to LA where he loves it there and play interior. You need to add someone. The Chargers need to add a big body in the interior, another one. I think Tillery, they're looking to start this year. Mebane can take a lesser role and just add someone to this depth of the interior because nobody was really great at that position for them last year. And you need to be able to stop the run better, more consistently than you have in the past. Linebacker, even by losing Jatavius Brown and some of these other guys, I think you're fine at linebacker, like with Thomas Davis, the ageless wonder, Denzel Perryman, Nwosu. These guys are all fine. You have the depth there. You've always been able to find linebackers. Maybe you could go out and sign another veteran name, but it wouldn't really be costly. Casey Hayward is a stud. Desmond King is a stud at corner. I'd like to see them sign another corner. I don't know who exactly. Throw out some names here. Fuller, Roby, Poole, Bradbury could be an option. I think Chris Harris would be a great option, but I don't think he fits the defense particularly well. Who's a good option for this defense? I think Trey Waynes would be interesting for this defense. Long, Roby, Bradbury, I think would be the one to look out for them. Safety, I think they need. You have Derwin James, he's strong safety, free safety, linebacker, wide receiver, kicker, offensive line, defensive line. Derwin James plays every position. Do you sign Clinton Dix, Trey Boston again? Bring him back. Do you sign Randall? Interesting. I think the free safety type would probably be the way to go. Do you bring back Adrian Phillips? I think Adrian Phillips and Derwin James. And then you have Adderley in there. I like the Chargers defense. I'm just realizing that I really like them. Like, I think if they add like one or two pieces, add a defensive lineman, add someone in the secondary, I'm all in on the Chargers defense. It's just the offense, without the quarterback, it sucks because this team has a lot of talent on it. But the offensive line is going to be first and foremost, number one priority. Get back Hunter Henry, move on from Gordon, and sign corners, sign a corner, sign a defensive lineman. Chargers are looking good. I think they could be a really good team again in short order. It could be good next year if their rookie turns out to be good. So, Chargers, there you go. The Oakland Raiders to end off or sorry, I should say the Las Vegas Raiders. They are going to end off the AFC for these team previews. The Raiders, I'm going to be a huge fan of the Raiders this year. I already know it. Like, I just have certain vibes about certain teams going into seasons, and I feel like the Raiders are going to be one of those teams. I really like the way they progressed last season. I think John Gruden was a Coach of the Year candidate. I mean, he was phenomenal last year. The way he coached up this team, a team that really wasn't super talented, but just enough talent. Like Darren Waller, what a find by them. Mike Mayock and John Gruden getting the most out of them. Josh Jacobs was excellent in his first season. Hunter Renfrow, everybody fell in love with again from Clemson. Tyrell Williams was kind of disappointing at the end of the year. The crazy story of Keelan Doss. And I'm going to start there. Wide receiver. Before I even get to corner. Wide receiver. We know John Gruden is a nut for wide receivers. And he loves veterans, specifically at wide receiver. Now, Antonio Brown didn't work out. And I said this. I've said this many times. I don't know how many times I said this on the channel. But Antonio Brown, if he would have been on the Raiders last year, they would have been in the playoffs. Honestly, the Raiders were close to being a playoff team last year, and if they had a player like Antonio Brown, that would have put them over the top offensively. They were a pretty good offense last year, somewhere in the middle of the league, I want to say. If they had a number one legit receiver, that takes them over the top. So, this is a team I could see trading for AJ Green. This is a team I could see signing Robbie Anderson. I could see signing Emmanuel Sanders. I could see going after Perryman or Robinson. I could see signing Randall Cobb. These are the type of receivers that Gruden likes. But the draft, again, has so many receivers. I could see the Raiders definitely going in the draft with a receiver. But I think they like Tyrell Williams as a number 2. I think they're forced to. They like Renfrow for sure. Everyone else is kind of like, whatever. But Darren Waller is a solid, not even solid, really good tight end. Their offensive line is solid. They don't need to do anything there. Then you have the quarterback position. The quarterback debate. Do you keep Derek Carr? If you keep Derek Carr, do you move on from Derek Carr? Do you allow him one more season? Or do you sign Tom Brady, if you can? Do you sign Jameis Winston, who I know Gruden has had an affinity for before? Do you sign Ryan Tannehill if you can? I don't think Breeze is an option. I don't think Mariota maybe as a backup. I think the Raiders might sign a quarterback who can push Carr. So Mariota actually makes sense. Case Keenum doesn't really make sense. But they probably need a backup. Unless they're going to go with Nate Peterman and Kaiser. Maybe they will. I think Glennon's probably gone. But running back, they've decided to go with Jacobs and Richard. I think they'll stay with that. I think Washington will be gone. I would not be shocked if they actually drafted or signed a guy at fullback to get bigger. I know they have one on their roster, but like a more prominent fullback, because I could see Gruden implementing that into his offense more prominently in 2020. Edge position is huge for them. Of course, Max Crosby was a great story. It played excellent last year. Clelin Ferrell I thought was a mistake at the 4th pick overall, I think was where he was picked last season. He, I think, has a ceiling to be a good player. I don't know if he's ever going to be great. I think they could go after edge players because there's a lot of them. And Mayoa, who was their leading sack leader, I think, last year, if I'm not mistaken, unless Crosby was, they could be a team to trade for Ngakwe. They could be a team to go after Clowney. They could go after Armstead, Fowler, Quinn, all of these guys, I think, are options for them. They have the cap to bring them in, and I think they could get like Michael Bennett. Yeah, there's a lot of names. Adrian Claiborne, I think, would fit the defense. Interior defensive line, I could see them signing Sue. I could see them signing McCoy, even though I think McCoy's going to go somewhere where he probably has a better chance to win. Maybe they do go after like DJ Reader or Hargrave, big guys in the interior, although they're more likely to go after... Interesting, though, like Hurst is more the athletic type, but PJ Hall and Hankins are more the beefy type. So, do they go Jerron Reed, Malik Collins? I think Collins is the one that I look at because now they do have Marinelli as their defensive line coach, who was the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys last year. So, Collins from Dallas makes sense for them. But I like Hurst a lot, and I think Hankins can still be a good player, and PJ Hall's interesting. They have some interesting guys, like Arden Key, I think can be decent. I don't know if he's ever going to be great, but he's a good complementary piece. So just getting 1 or 2 studs up front would be great for the Raiders, and of course they have extra draft picks. But linebacker is a huge need for them as well. I think Corey Littleton is the ideal signing here. Schobert could also be a signing here. I think they could look at Devondre Campbell or Michael Kendricks or Kwiatkowski. Any of these younger type of guys that are just hitting their prime would be good ads for them. Corner is another one. Mullen, of course, they picked in the second round, but they probably want to add, right? They've basically revamped their entire secondary since Gruden has come in. Joseph's likely gone, but they have Abram, who's a stud, got hurt last year, and LaMarcus Joyner, who's really good, who can play both slot corner and free safety. So they have, and strong safety. So they have both of those guys. Abram could move to strong safety or play free safety. I think it's up to whatever they want to do there on their defense, but I think those will be their 2 safeties. They might bring in another safety from the draft just as their third guy, but I don't think that would be top priority. Corner is top priority. This could be a Byron Jones landing spot. This could be a Bradbury landing spot. This could be a Fuller landing spot. Any of the top corners. Denard would be a great fit. Waynes would be a decent fit. I think any of these guys that are at the top of the corner list would be excellent for the Raiders. I think the Raiders could be a very good team next year. If they bring in a Littleton and a Jones, that could revamp their entire defense. They still have draft picks. They could go receiver in the draft. That would upgrade their offense. I think they're going to have a clear plan, and you're going to see it from day one of free agency. That's why the Raiders are one of the most interesting teams in this free agency, because they're top 10 in cap space. They have the needs that match up with this free agency class, and really they're not that far away with a good coach in Vegas, in a new stadium with a lot of excitement going into their situation this year. I think they're a great team to watch out for this free agency. That is the end of the AFC. I'm going to get into the NFC. Damn right I am. But before that, let's get into some comments. That is the Cowboys you're looking at right now. So let's look at the comments. Guys, thank you for sticking around this long. Jeez, I appreciate you. Whether you've been here the whole time, you've only been here for 5 minutes, you've been here for 2 hours, you've been here for 4 hours. I don't know how long I've been on here. Been on here for over 2 hours. So I appreciate that. Okay, let's get to the comments. Ooh. I don't know how far to scroll back. Oh my gosh. Thank you guys for all the comments. Okay, I'm going to stop at... Okay, where should I stop? Okay, let's start here. Is there any questions? Specifically questions. There's a lot of comments. Havana says, Mitch, don't mention Jordan Phillips. People might want him. Jonathan says, Jake Butt. Jake Butt is a phenomenal name. He is all name team type of guy right there. Broncos might actually be good next year because they got Vic Fangio. A couple of people saying in the chat. Jonathan says, no, Locke is so good. Jonathan asked if I've done the Eagles yet. No, but I'm getting to them very soon. Very, very soon. Okay. Broncos are not getting Sanders back. Jonathan just says AB. That's it. Best comment of the night right there. Have I done the Seahawks yet? No. Kevin Cat says I hate the Mahomes. That's not true. Mahomes just gave me 50,000 views on a video. I love Mahomes. A Human says, has Mitch done the Seahawks yet? No. Who are your receivers going to be for Carr? I think they're going to draft one. Tyrell Williams, Renfro, Waller, and they probably will sign someone. I don't know who, but... Bodo says, Mitch, next time you do this, put the team name you're talking about. I mean, can't you pick it up while I'm talking about them? Bodo? Come on, bro. But that's a fair point. I will take that into consideration. But if you're watching it or listening to it, you should be able to figure it out after about 2 seconds. Raiders Act says, hopefully Judy or Lamb to start with Renfro in the slot and Williams at number 2. That's how I see it as well. I think that you could bring in another guy, though. I wouldn't be shocked because it's Gruden. What's up, Mez? Did I say the Chiefs are bringing back Chris Jones? I think they will, but they could trade him. Who's better, DK or AJ Brown? Good question. They're both great. That's a good question. I think DK has higher ceiling, but I don't know. I think AJ Brown was overall better last year. And plus AJ Brown, plus DK has Russell Wilson, so it's really hard. Yeah, there's not a lot of questions in here, just a lot of comments. I appreciate you guys having your own conversation. That's nice. Havana says, question of the day. How hurt will Mitch be when Brady leaves? I already said I'll have 2 favorite teams. Cameron says, who should the Bills target in free agency and the draft? I will not be getting to the draft in this video. I already talked about the Bills. I'll be releasing the video separately so you can figure out what I said, or you could scroll back already because I already talked about them. So, but I do think they'll be targeting the edge position. I do think they'll be targeting defensive line, offensive line, wide receiver. Those are the positions. Okay. Is it time for the NFC? Is it time for the Cowboys? Are the Eagles a contender next year? Good question. Depends what they do in free agency, honestly. They usually draft and sign well. So I will say they're in the playoff conversation. I don't know if they're quite a contender, though. That's a good question. Okay, let's go to the Dallas Cowboys. The boys. America's team. With probably their most interesting free agency in a long time. Because they have a lot of big names up on the market. You start with Dak Attack Prescott. Their quarterback. Their face of their franchise. Is he the future? I believe that Dak Prescott and the Cowboys will figure out a way for him to remain their starting quarterback for 2020. I believe it. I don't see him going anywhere else. I don't see Jerry Jones allowing him to leave the building. So that means the Dallas Cowboys, they have the 6th most cap space in the NFL, over $70 million. They can sign him. That would take a good chunk of it away for this season, but I think it's worth it because I think Dak is a top 10 quarterback. I think Dak has proven it. I think also Dak has the intangibles. He has the leadership. He's a hard worker, and he's still very young. And he can only get better, I believe, within this Kellen Moore offense that they just implemented last year. And what was he, 2nd in passing yards last year? I mean, he had a good year. Hopefully he can turn it into some Super Bowl championships for the Cowboys, but he's a good quarterback. And I don't think you let those type of guys get away. Plus, he's strong, he's athletic, he can move, he's got an arm on him. It's hard to find a quarterback with all of those capabilities, plus the intangibles. It's hard, very hard. The question and the tough part about the Cowboys is, how do they keep all these great players together by signing Dak Prescott that much money? Now, this might be a hot take. This might hurt some Cowboy fan feelings. I don't think they should have signed Zeke to the money they did. I would have preferred to sign Byron Jones. That's just my opinion. You can hate all you want. Leave your comments. That's how I see it. But they did what they did, and they got to live with their consequences. Amari Cooper. He is, in my opinion, a top 10 receiver in the league. He's an excellent route runner. I would say he's a top 5 route runner in the league. He can be a little soft at times, but he's a great receiver with no attitude. So that's great because you don't find that very often. He loves Dallas. He wants to be there. And he's still extremely young. So you are building your young quarterback with your young receiver for the next possibly 10 years, which is great if you're a Cowboys fan. So both those guys I think will be signed, sealed, delivered by Jerry Jones. Now those are the 2 biggest guys on offense. Then you look at Byron Jones on defense. He's going to be gone. He's just going to cost too much. He might get the most money at the corner position on the open market. He's a really good player, but they just simply can't afford him at this point. That is when we're going to get into the corner conversation for the Cowboys because they have 2 pretty good guys, but no clear number 1. So they got to sort that out. And their corner position probably won't be as good as it's been the last 2 years with Byron Jones there. Tight end. Does Jason Witten come back? Even if he does, do you involve Jarwin more on your offense? Do you bring in a tight end? Do you sign an Eric Ebron? Do you sign a Tyler Eifert? Probably not Austin Hooper. Probably not Hunter Henry. Maybe Jordan Reed. Somebody of the lower variety that maybe has some potential in his game. Randall Cobb, I think, could be back as well. Mike McCarthy's the new head coach. Cobb played for Green Bay. Cobb likes McCarthy. McCarthy likes Cobb. He wants to be there, I believe, in Dallas, and I believe Dallas wants him back, so I think you could see that. Tavon Austin, if you want to bring him back, you can. He's a returner and a trickster. Michael Gallup is there, signed for the foreseeable future right now. He is a good player and a good number 2 for Amari Cooper's number 1. Offensive line-wise, good news. You're all set. No free agents. Good for you. Defensively, a lot of questions. Michael Bennett's a free agent. I could see him leaving just based on money and price. Christian Covington, I think will get a better price somewhere else. Malik Collins might get a better price somewhere else. The one name they do want to keep is Robert Quinn, and I believe that's the only guy that's really irreplaceable out of all the free agents. Robert Quinn, I would say, was better than DeMarcus Lawrence last year. Robert Quinn had the most wins of any edge defender in the league last year in terms of pass rushing productivity. That's hard to replace, whether that was scheme-driven or not. Robert Quinn really turned his career around last year in Dallas, had an excellent year, and I think a lot of teams will be competing for his services. But Jerry Jones has said they really want Robert Quinn back. So that makes me believe that all of these other guys, Bennett, Covington, Collins, will all be gone. Which I don't think, like, Bennett's a good player, Collins is a good player, Covington's a good player. They're all good players, but I don't think they're irreplaceable. DeMarcus Lawrence is there, so you're good. So if you have DeMarcus Lawrence and you re-sign Robert Quinn, you have your 2 starting edge guys. Then you just add the depth. You draft guys. I do think they could use a good run-stuffing defensive tackle. You know, if that's Snacks or that's Shelton or that's Jernigan, or you bring back Covington and play him, or one of these guys that are under the radar, maybe Onyemata, which fits the scheme well from New Orleans. One of these guys that are run stuffers, guys that can stop the run, because the one thing that I will say about Dallas' defensive line is they're a little, last year I felt like they were a little small. They're a little on the smaller end. Very athletic, but a little small. So by adding some beef there, you get better versus the run. But the number one priority is clearly Robert Quinn. Leighton Vander Esch, Jalen Smith will be your linebackers. Sean Lee will likely move on unless he wants to come back for like a 1-year low-cost contract. But I do think he will get better money elsewhere to start somewhere. Vander Esch and Smith will be your 2 linebackers that you play basically every snap. And then they'll probably draft some guys to come in as some backups. And the good news for Cowboys fans is I don't know if there's been a better team at drafting players. Jerry Jones and the Cowboys have been excellent at drafting talent, especially lately. So I look at the Cowboys, and even though they have these depth players that are pretty good, that are free agents, I don't worry because you have really good drafting lineage. You're really good at that. Safety is a position I think they could spend some money on. I think Clinton Dix would be a great ad for them. I think they could take a swing at Jimmy Ward from San Francisco, Trey Boston, Demarius Randall, free safeties. I think you got to look at that. Xavier Woods could slide over to strong safety. Jeff Heath is likely gone. Darian Thompson likely gone. Awuzie will be back. Lewis will be back at corner, so that's good. Anthony Brown is a free agent as well as Byron Jones. Some corners that I think fit the system pretty well that I think would be great for the Cowboys to sign that at a lot cheaper than Byron Jones would be Roby, would be Denard, would be Waynes. Jimmy Smith, I think, is a perfect ad for the Cowboys, given that he is tall, long, and not as fast as Byron Jones, but he could play a similar role, skill set. Maybe you bring back Claiborne. Maybe you bring in Talib. These are all possibilities for the Cowboys. But I think the Cowboys have a good foundation as long as they take care of their own. They'll have to move on from Byron Jones, but add a couple depth pieces on the defensive line. Add a corner to replace Byron Jones. You'll be in a good spot. And if you can upgrade your safety position, if you can upgrade maybe tight end, I think the Cowboys... And I don't think the Cowboys have to do a lot, because I think, honestly, what the Cowboys' best addition was head coach. Honestly. So, there you go. That's my thoughts on the Dallas Cowboys this free agency. The Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles. They're always an interesting team come free agency because they always are active and they're always willing to compete for names. They're always willing to make trades, savvy moves. And that's why I like Howie Roseman and the Eagles. This year is interesting, different, because I think they have more needs this year than they have in a couple of seasons. They really need receivers. It looks like Jeffrey's going to be gone. It looks like Aguilar is going to be gone. So that really just leaves them with Deshaun Jackson, who's only getting older, and Arcega-Whiteside. And then if you want to throw in like Greg Ward Jr. or whatever, you can. So this is great because the draft has so many receivers So they could go probably pick a receiver in the draft and then sign a receiver. Now, my thought is that they might go hard after Demarcus Robinson, go hard after Robbie Anderson, go hard after one of these kind of guys. And Demarcus Robinson makes the most sense to me because he fits the offense very well. He played for Andy Reid, therefore transferring to Doug Peterson. And I think he'd be a solid number 2 for this offense. And I think Wentz only elevates your receivers. The offensive line is good, one of the best in the league, and they don't really have any free agents outside of Jason Peters and Vaitai, who, yeah, that's free agents for sure. But Peters is probably playing his last season, and you drafted Andre Dillard because you knew that Peters is going to be moving on. So he's not going to be back. He'll probably get more money elsewhere. Vaitai, same thing there. But you have Lane Johnson, and you have Andre Dillard. And the hope is that Andre Dillard can just be good in replacing Peters. But Jason Kelce's is there, Brandon Brooks is there, so you're good. Running back, Miles Sanders will be the starter. Outside of that, they always find kind of the complement guys, Corey Clement, Boston Scott. Maybe they bring back Jordan Howard. I don't think they need to. They could maybe draft someone there in the middle rounds. Defensively, you look at linebacker, which is a huge need. I think you could bring back Grugier Hill and give him some more playing time, which I think would be wise, but it doesn't seem like they've been willing to do that very often. And they've had the opportunity to. I think he's actually a good player. You could bring back Michael Kendricks if you wanted. Martinez is interesting. You could bring in like Schobert, Devondre Campbell. You moved on from Bradham, so that's interesting. An interesting position because the Eagles have not been willing to pay linebackers. Do they draft them? What do? They definitely need them. I don't think they want to go into the season with TJ Edwards, Alex Singleton, and Nathan Jerry. Like, I don't think they want that. And Duke Riley. Like, they need some linebackers. None of these guys I just said you probably know unless you're an Eagles fan. So, sign one, draft one, and we'll see from there. That's my thought. Safety, for the first time in a while, you need free safety. And then apparently Malcolm Jenkins is up in the air about his contract, but he's such an ingrained Philadelphia Eagle, I don't think he's going anywhere. Safety, I think you could bring in Clinton Dix, I think would be great. I think Trey Boston would be good. I think Randall would be good. I think Kendall Fuller, if you wanted like a free safety corner hybrid. But we all know that they need corners, and I haven't even brought up defensive line yet, but they have Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, and Derek Barnett still there. They have Malik Jackson playing this season, which is great. But Curry, Jernigan, and Ridgeway are all free agents. My guess is they re-sign Jernigan and Curry, and they just draft. But as long as they bring back Curry, you're fine at the edge, because Josh Sweat is there, Miller is still there. You have some guys that can work into the rotation. But if you lose Curry, then all of a sudden edge becomes an issue and you need to sign someone else. Jernigan is really good for them when he plays, but he's just injured a lot. I think he would be perfect as a number 3 with Jackson and Cox being the starters because you never know when Jernigan's going to be hurt. Corner, I want them to sign Byron Jones. I know a lot of Eagles fans don't want that for whatever reason. They need corners. Whether that's drafting them, signing them, I think they need to sign 1, 2, 3 corners. Just please, like the Texans, sign corners. Chris Harris is an option. Bradbury, Fuller, Roby, Poole, Denard, Waynes. Jimmy Smith is an option. Any of these frigging guys. Like, just one of them. One of the top guys, and I would be satisfied if I'm an Eagles fan, and then we can work from the draft with the rest. What you really have right now in your secondary is Avonte Maddox at corner, I should say, Rasul Douglas, Sidney Jones, Crevon LeBlanc. Those are your corners. Darby is going to be gone. Mills is probably going to be gone. If you brought in a Byron Jones, this would completely change your entire defense. Now you have a number 1 corner. You can scheme up the rest. You don't need number 2 corners at number 1 level. Like, you can find number 2 corners, but it's very difficult to find number 1 corners. And that's been the issue with the Eagles for years now. Even when they won the Super Bowl, that was their issue, their biggest flaw in their team. And that's why I think Eagles fans are like, oh, just build the defensive line, don't worry about corner. The league is a change-in. Corner is even more important than it's ever been. The New York Giants are up next on this journey of free agency team previews. The New York Giants are perhaps the biggest, I want to say, domino? Is domino the word? Like, they are such a trendsetter for this free agency because they have the 5th most cap space. They have $78 million. They have needs at the 3 positions that hold the best players. Corner, edge, right, or tackle, and if you want to throw in defensive line. So let's start with their own. Their guys that they want to re-sign are Leonard Williams because they paid for him in draft picks, and it seems like they want to pay him and they want to bring him back. And I think if they did, it would be smart because it would solidify their interior. They would have Dexter Lawrence, Dalvin Tomlinson, Leonard Williams. Very good interior 3-4 defensive line. You're set. There you go. Marcus Golden, I think they could bring back if they like. I think he will be a tad expensive, maybe get a tad too much money, but there's so many edge players here. Like, I rank him 12th on my edge list, and he had over 10 sacks. So you're getting 12th best guy back, and then you add, I think they're going to go after Clowney. I think that's the number 1 guy they're going to go after, Clowney. And I could see them getting Clowney. I think he fits the defense perfectly with Patrick Graham. I could see them going after Kyle Van Noy because of the New England connection with both Joe Judge and Patrick Graham. I could see them going after Jamie Collins at linebacker. I think they're going to bring back David Mayo because he was phenomenal last year for them. Very underrated player, but really performed. Lorenzo Carter I liked a lot coming out of the draft, and he's a good piece to have. But I think they sign a linebacker to add some athletic ability there and a hybrid guy. That's why I like Jamie Collins. I think Michael Kendricks is another one that you could look at there. I don't think they're going to sign like Littleton or Schobert or anybody like that, but they got rid of Ogletree, so look out if they do sign a linebacker. But edge is the most important thing for them, and corner. They are a team that will be in contention for Byron Jones. They will be a team that's in contention for Bradbury. Kendall Fuller, I think, is a good one. I think they'll try and pay Devin McCourty as well at safety. They also need safeties. I mean, Antoine Bethea is like 4,024 years old. I don't know how much longer this guy can be playing. Jabril Peppers seems like he is going to be their strong safety. Julian Love is in there as well in the mix. But they could sign a safety. I wouldn't be shocked, but I don't think they're going to pay a lot of money to sign that safety. I think they're going to prefer to sign corners and start them alongside Baker and Ballentine, and then they're going to sign edge players. And I for sure think they're going to sign 1 or 2 front 7 guys, like without a doubt in my mind. I think one that's an interesting fit is Carl Nassib because he has the connection to the defensive line coach of the Giants. He coached Carl Nassib at Penn State, so that's a connection to look out for. I could see Logan Ryan potentially being one that the Giants go after at corner. So there's a lot of potential names there that you look at that I think the Giants will be looking to. Obviously, offensive line. I think they'll be in play for Conklin. They'll be in play for Tooney, I believe. Or not Tooney, sorry. For McGovern at center. I think but mostly tackle. I think if it's Balaga, if it's Peters, if it's Williams, one of these tackles will be a Giant, in my opinion. Unless they draft one in the first round. That's the only other way. Like, if they decide to draft one in the first round and then just address their defense in free agency, that might be the smart way to go. But you never know with the Giants. All right. The Washington Redskins. The Redskins have a lot of needs. The Redskins, actually, I'm a little bit more positive about the Redskins this year than I was last year because I actually see the foundation. I like their coach for a team that can make some strides. I'm not saying that they're going to be a playoff team. I'm not going to say they're going to win their division. I'm not even saying they're not finishing last in their division, which very well could happen. But they have some pieces. I like their defensive line. I think they have edge rushers, which is important. They have at least one safety. They have one receiver. And it seems like they have a quarterback that they want to work with. And Ron Rivera is a good coach. So when looking at their needs, let's start with corner. This team could bring in Byron Jones. A lot of people have connected Bradbury to them. They're not really a man-to-man team. They're more of a zone team. I could see Waynes being there. I could see... That's actually tough because, they got rid of Norman, which I think was a good move. They need basically corners everywhere. Like Moreau, I think Moreau is like the only guy that they could start. Dunbar, I think, wants to be traded unless that situation has been updated. So they need corners bad. So they're going to assign at least one of these big names. Or they're going to fight over them. And I think they have the inside track on James Bradbury if they want him. Free safety, unless they start Troy Apke or Everett again, they need one. And I could see them bringing in Trey Boston because of how well he played for Carolina last year and Ron Rivera having that connection. That makes sense to me. Linebacker, they could re-sign John Bostic. They could bring in other guys like Kwiatkowski, Trevathan, Landon Roberts. I think they could bring in A.J. Klein from the Carolina days. My guess is that they're going to be more of a 4-3 based defense, given that Rivera has only exclusively had his teams in 4-3, and Dax Del Rio has only exclusively had his teams in 4-3 defenses. So my guess is they're going to shift their linebacking group, which would make sense to get away from the John Bostic types and bring into the more athletic guys like Schobert, Littleton, Campbell, and less so Martinez. And I think Klein would make sense. To start that, maybe they move on from Kerrigan. Do they decide to trade Kerrigan or not? Because he doesn't really seem to fit this defense unless he's going to play edge in the sense of a 4-3 end instead of a 4-3 type of end. But of course, teams nowadays, it's more nickel, it's more dime than anything else. Offensive line, Trent Williams wants to be traded or paid $20 million a year. First off, he's not going to be paid $20 million a year, but he probably will be traded. Brandon Sheriff will be back. I think Eric Flowers will be back at left guard, so they need to address left tackle. Running backs, fine. I would like to see them get a receiver, but it will most likely be coming in the way of the draft. So, for the Redskins, corners, they'll go after. Linebacker, they might sign one depth guy. I think a safety they could sign, and probably just re-signing their guards. And then they'll look to continue to build the foundation of their young football team. We'll see with the Redskins. They are promising, which I don't like to say about the Redskins because they really, really disappoint a lot of football fans. The NFC North. Let's kick it off with the Chicago Bears. The Bears have a lot of needs, more so than the last couple of seasons. Last year, going into last season, they were considered a contender. And I think they would have been if not for their quarterback play and a couple other circumstances. They still have Matt Nagy as their head coach calling plays on offense. Bill Lazor's brought in as the offensive coordinator, which brings in some interesting questions. Chuck Pagano, defensive coordinator, performed well last year. So, Mitch Trubisky. Let's just start with Mitch. Number one need is quarterback. And I don't really necessarily mean it as replacing Mitch Trubisky, but I do mean it as at least bringing in somebody to push Mitch Trubisky to make him a better player. And I think that guy's Andy Dalton. I think it's clearly Andy Dalton. If it's not Andy Dalton, it's Nick Foles. They're going to make a trade. I don't think they're going to sign anyone. I mean, Bridgewater makes sense to me in terms of a scheme fit, in terms of a guy that I think fits their team well. Quick decision maker who can execute short passing game. That makes sense. Mitch Trubisky could very well be the starter again because they want to give him the opportunity to start. But bringing in that backup, bringing in that guy to back him up is the big thing. I think just bringing in somebody is smart. So I think it should be one of the three guys. Dalton, Bridgewater, or Foles. You take your pick. Offensive line-wise, they struggled at tackle last year, and that was part of the reason why Trubisky was so bad, because he had no time. Because edge rushers were just killing the Bears. James Daniels at left guard is solid, good, I would say. Cody Whitehair at center is good. They need to upgrade right guard. I don't think they're going to be a team to pay the right guard, because really Andy Reid teams have rarely spent a lot of money that wasn't coming from their own. And I mean Andy Reid as in Matt Nagy. And I think they come from the same thought of building teams, even though Nagy's not the GM. I'm just putting that out there. I think they'd prefer to draft a guard, and I think they will at some point during the draft. Now, tight end has been talked about now. I think they're fine at tight end. Honestly, I see it. I see why people say it's a need. I actually think receiver is a bigger need than tight end. I think it's a more addressable need. There's not a lot of great tight ends in the league. Trey Burton is a solid tight end, and you brought in Demetrius Harris, who's also solid. You have Adam Shaheen. I mean, that's three tight ends that are decent at the very least. I mean, Shaheen's not great, but he's at least a third tight end in this league. And you have Trey Burton and Harris, who are a good 1-2, and two different types. Burton's more of the athlete. Harris is more of the bigger-bodied type of guy. So I think you're fine at tight end. I understand why you might want to address it. And I could see Tyler Eifert being the move here, with Bill Lazor being the offensive coordinator. But anyone really else for a lot of money doesn't make sense. Like Eifert for a low contract makes sense. Wide receiver, though, you have Allen Robinson. Patterson is your kind of trick kind of guy. Like, he's going to play a running back. He's going to get handoffs. He's a kick returner. Anthony Miller looked good in the slot. But I would like to see a number two, a legitimate number two on the outside for the Bears. I could see them signing DeMarcus Robinson. I could see them signing Nelson Aguilar. I could see them signing one of those guys or drafting someone. I think the interesting thing is, do they try and trade for AJ Green? Because, of course, you have the laser connection, and you have a team that is probably wanting to win now. I mean, they've put their assets in such a way that they have pretty much forced themselves to win now. Running back, you're good with Montgomery and Cohen. Defensive line, you are beyond that with Hicks, Goldman, Robertson Harris, and all those guys that you have up front. You're good. Khalil Mack and Leonard Floyd at edge is good. You could bring in another guy at edge, but I don't think you have the money. I just don't. I mean, Mack is great, and Floyd is startable player. Kwiatkowski, I think you'll want to bring back, and I think you'll move on from Trevathan at linebacker. Roycon Smith is developing. He's still not quite there, but he's developing. Kyle Fuller at one cornerback spot, but I actually think corner is a huge need for this team. Outside of Fuller, I don't see anybody that I really love. Buster Screen's that slot guy. Eddie Jackson at safety. Is probably going to get paid more elsewhere. So, safety, you're probably looking at a lower cost option. Geithers from Indianapolis is an interesting one because of the Chuck Pagano connection. But corner. I could see the Bears as a team that are in contention for a number 2 corner. Whether that is like a Trey Waynes, a Jimmy Smith, even like a Breland, a Denard, one of these guys that can play number 2 corner at a better level than what they had. So, those are the main needs for the Bears. The Bears do have needs. The Bears, if they could figure out their quarterback situation and they could get one more weapon, a little bit better pass protection, and one more corner, they could be where they were a couple seasons ago. I don't think at this point they will, because I think their quarterback spot is still too far off. But they have good players, and it's a matter of producing at this point for the Bears. The Lions! I love talking about the Lions. I mean, who doesn't love talking about the Lions? Right? I've already made a video about the Lions this offseason. It was my first solo video. If you haven't already checked that video out, go make sure you check that video out. But I've been a really big supporter and positive thinker about the Lions these recent seasons. It sucked to see the product on the field disappoint me. A lot of that has come down to, I feel, injuries and a little bit of Detroit Lions bad luck. But I don't think this team is that far off with a couple of additions and a good offseason from being a team that could compete for a playoff spot. So let's talk about the Lions. Offensive line, let's start there. So Glasgow seems to be gone, I believe. That would mean that the guard position is probably going to be a position that you need to sign someone, you need to draft someone, and even then, the left guard is already a weakness in your offense. So I would say Andrus Peat would be a guy in free agency that I would look for them to target because he's big, he's strong, and that is the type of Patricia offensive lineman that he really likes. Plus, Patricia is an offensive line type of guy. I believe he coached offensive line in New England, at least at some point in his career, as a assistant under Scarnecchia. So he values offensive line. And I'm interested to hear why Glasgow actually is not going to be a part of the team. I don't know if it's a difference in he wants to play center or what it is really, but I've heard that he wants out and they are willing to move on. So that might be a draft pick scenario. But Ragnow's good at center. Decker's good at tackle. Wagner's okay. But this offensive line definitely could use some work, and they might look to the draft to do that. Wide receiver, they're good. I think even re-signing Jermaine Kearse would be a smart add. But Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones, and Danny Amendola are a good three, a good trio. I don't think you need to go out in free agency and sign anyone, really. Maybe just a lower name like a Jermaine Kearse, somebody of that caliber. Maybe like a Philip Dorsett or like a, let me see, like a smaller name. Paul Richardson, take a chance on him. Taylor Gabriel, add some speed. Devin Funchess, like a smaller name. Tajay Sharp, one of those type of guys. Nobody major. TJ Hawkinson, Jesse James, you have your tight end duo there. Matt Stafford is back. Matt Stafford is not being traded. Matt Stafford will be the franchise quarterback for the Lions because he's one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the league. You heard it here. There's no doubt in my mind, and I don't think he should be traded, and I don't think it makes sense to trade him because his contract is absolutely not tradable. And who are you going to find that is better than Matt Stafford in the league that is not already signed or the team is willing to get rid of? Nobody. So Matt Stafford is the move. Kerryon Johnson has been injured a lot. Bo Scarborough played well in replacing him, and I think that's a good 1-2. I would look to bring in, you have Ty Johnson and McKissick, but I'd like to bring in another pass-catching type of back in this offense to help out Stafford out of the backfield, kind of like you had in Theo Riddick. Theo Riddick's time just passed, but somebody that can catch the football out of the backfield would be a nice add. I think Scarborough and Johnson are good enough on the ground to get it done. Defensively, you look at edge and defensive line, which are both big needs. I think Hand should play more in the interior than anything. Mike Daniels, I've heard they could re-sign. A'Shawn Robinson could be gone. Danny Shelton makes sense because of the Patriot connection, but he also makes sense for this defense, period. I could see guys like them going after DJ Reader. I predicted that to happen. I could very well see that. I think that's the type of guy that fits this defense. Hargrave's the type of guy. Shelby Harris is the type of guy. There's a lot of them in this free agency, which I think is good news for Lions fans. Derek Wolfe, Billings, all these guys here, Jernigan, Covington, all fit the Lions' interior issues. you're not going to really find, unless you trade for Chris Jones or you sign DJ Reader, you're not going to find a great pass rushing interior force. There's just not a lot of those that aren't signed to teams. So you have to look to the edge. And outside of Trey Flowers, I think what the Lions really need is that hybrid linebacker edge type of player. The Kyle Van Noy, the Bud Dupree, the Fowler, the Clowney, if they want. One of these type of guys, even like Irvin or Beasley, they need to upgrade the edge. Sheared. They need to be more athletic up front, but they also, like, too many times I saw Trey Flowers playing that role, and he just doesn't fit it. Flowers is better at pass rushing from the interior. He's not excellent from the edge. He's good. He's not excellent. He had a good season last year, but you need those edge athletic guys. And to me, when I look at the Lions' defensive line last year, they're just too slow, too big. They're big, and that's great. But you need also to throw in those athletic pieces. And also, you could see that at linebacker. Do the Lions try and sign a Corey Littleton or a Jamie Collins or a Schobert or a Campbell or a Kendricks? A linebacker that is a hybrid in terms of he can blitz, he could cover, he could stop the run. And I think that's the type of guy that they value. A Landon Roberts makes a lot of sense because Patricia absolutely loves that guy. I think he did an interview like a month ago where he said, "That's my boy." Like, that's how much he loves him. So Landon Roberts, just because he's a Patriot, I'm not just saying it because of that. He loves him. I'm just telling you. Okay, secondary. Tavon Wilson, I hope, is back because he played pretty well last year for them. Tracy Walker is their free safety. They got rid of Diggs to Seattle, which I think was a bad move, personally. Darius Slay might be traded. So what do? Do you sign Byron Jones and trade Darius Slay, and then you draft the stud in the draft, Okudah? Or what's your decision? Because you have Justin Coleman in the slot. That's good. But does Darius Slay stay, or does he go? And that's the ultimate question at corner for the Lions. And I think really it all works from there. Do you trade Slay? If you don't, what happens? If you trade Slay, do you sign someone? If you don't trade Slay, do you keep him and add a number 2 corner, or do you just draft Okudah and then go from there? If you keep Slay, you sign a big name edge guy, and then you draft Okudah in your secondary, and your front look a lot better. So I think it all falls starting with Darius Slay, and that's how you'll be able to figure out what the Lions are doing. But I like the Lions roster. I think they need to add an athletic linebacker edge player, hopefully a dynamic edge player. They need to replace their defensive linemen, whatever they do there. They have the money to do so. Guard, they'll probably draft, and I think they're good. I think they can be good. And as long as they don't lose Matt Stafford to long-term injury, they should be fine. The Green Bay Packers. The Packers were pretty close to being a team that went far. A team that went to the Super Bowl. I mean, they went to the NFC Championship. I don't think a lot of people predicted that before the year, but whenever you have Aaron Rodgers, you have a chance, an opportunity to do so. So the Green Bay Packers, I think they have clear needs. This is a team that I look at their roster and I'm like, yep, need. They don't have a lot of re-signings. And the guys that really they need to re-sign, they don't really feel like re-signing. I mean, other than Brian Bulaga, they don't really have a lot of re-signings, and that's probably why they only have $19 million in cap space. So when looking at what they need, let's start with linebacker, because the number one reason they lost in the NFC Championship, they could not stop the run. And I think this is a combined thing. This is defensive line, big guys on the defensive line to combine with Kenny Clark and linebackers. And their linebacking play was not good enough. So they're moving on from Blake Martinez. Littleton, Schobert, these guys would be perfect for this defense, and I think they will sign somebody. Or they'll just go with maybe a Bradham, Trevathan. They'll go with the known veteran for a cheaper contract, but they'll sign a couple of them. they'll do one of the other at linebacker, in my opinion. And I think that would go a long way to helping them stop the run better in 2020. Also, signing a guy like a Brockers, a McCoy, a Sue, a Daniels, re-sign him if they want. I don't think so, but just throwing it out there. Snacks Harrison would be perfect to help stop the run. A'Shawn Robinson, a lower tier guy that I think would be great. These guys would really help bolster the size and the skill of their front. And, again, go a long way to helping them out. They have the pass rush. They have Preston Smith. They have Zadarius Smith. They have Rashawn Gary. You're good. Fackrell's probably gone. He'll go somewhere else and start somewhere else, most likely. But you're good with the Smith bros to get after the quarterback. You need to get beefier up front, and you need to get faster at linebacker, and that's what they'll do. Now, corner-wise, they're good. I think they'll bring back Tramon Williams for a cheap contract. Safety, they're pretty solid as well with Amos and Savage. Savage played well in his rookie season. The big need for me is receiver and tight end, and I understand all the people talking about Austin Hooper to the Packers. I think it's all noise. I don't think they should go after a tight end because they've tried the tight end route before. They tried it with Jimmy Graham. It didn't work. Let's go somewhere else. Aaron Rodgers isn't a big tight end guy. Their offense traditionally hasn't been a big tight end offense. I would go with receivers. I'm going Devontae Adams, and I'm finding a receiver. Whether that's trading for A.J. Green, whether that's signing Robbie Anderson, Emmanuel Sanders, sign Cobb back, dang it. Whatever it has to be, I'm signing somebody. And I would prefer to get a speedy guy, a downfield threat. But I do think, I think Robbie Anderson would be a great fit for this offense. They need somebody at receiver. And if it comes in the draft, it comes in the draft. There's a great draft class for the wide receiver position. The Packers could go there. But when I look at the Packers, they have clear needs. It's laid out for them. If they improve these needs, which I think they will, they have to be smart with their money because they don't have a lot of it. Sign Bulaga, work from there. Sign a couple veteran linebackers who can help you versus the run. Sign a veteran defensive lineman who can help you versus the run. Re-sign Tramon Williams. Sign a receiver or draft a receiver, and you're good. And get rid of Graham to open up the cap space. And then you could sign a tight end. But you don't need a high-tier tight end. If you sign a tight end, you don't need, Hunter Henry or Austin Hooper. I think you can get away with something less in this offense. The Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings don't have a lot of cap space, as you can see. They only have $1 million in cap space. So this is why I'm really intrigued to see what the Vikings do before cutting Everson Griffin, which I think they plan on bringing him back somehow, some way. They had they were in the negatives for cap space. I could see the Vikings taking a step back if they don't have a great offseason here because it's going to be tricky. They need to be smart. They're good at some foundational positions. I mean, they have Danielle Hunter, they have Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. They have Kirk Cousins. They have Dalvin Cook. They have Bradbury at center. They have Eric Kendricks at linebacker. They have Harrison Smith at safety. They have foundational pieces. Now, the thing is here with the Vikings, they could make a lot of moves to open some cap space up. Whether that's get rid of Xavier Rhodes, that would open up a lot of space. Whether that's trade Stephon Diggs, which I don't think they want to do, but that could happen. There are moves they can make to open up more space. Linval Joseph is another one. I think they want to bring back Griffin. So assuming that they bring back Griffin, which is why I only have the edge need at number 3, they'll be fine at edge. So they have Hunter and Griffin, who are great. Hunter especially. Barr and Kendricks at linebacker, they're good. Which you almost wonder if they would have been better off letting Barr go, but that's just my opinion. They're good at linebacker. Eric Wilson as well. Kendricks was phenomenal last year. I think the number one position they need to improve is corner. And I think Anthony Harris is leaving. So they need to draft or they need to bring in a safety. If that's a lower tier guy like me, I think what they'll do is draft someone because they're very good at developing safeties. Zimmer gets the best out of them. They could also use a number 3 receiver for cheap if they can find one. And they could use tackles. I mean, Riley Reef and O'Neal. O'Neal's okay. Reef you could upgrade. That could be definitely a draft spot. Left tackle. You could draft a right guard over Josh Klein. There's a lot of things that the Vikings have to do. So they have to really figure out what their priorities are this offseason. Is their priority to get a number 1 corner? Is their priority to upgrade the offensive line even more? Is their priority to retain Griffin and continue to work that defensive line? So there's a lot of ways to go here, but I think for success for the Vikings, you find a cheap third receiver to upgrade that spot. You draft offensive linemen, left tackle, right guard. You re-sign Everson Griffin and sign 1 corner and draft a corner. I think, and get rid of Rhodes. You might even have to sign 2 corners. Like, if you could sign, like, even a Jonathan Joseph, Zimmer's old friend, and then you add, like, a bigger name, like a Bradbury, which they might not have enough money for, but or like a Roby, a Denard, who I think would fit the defense well, or Jimmy Smith. One of these guys that I think would be an upgrade over Xavier Rhodes at this point, that would be great. We'll see what the Vikings do. Let me know what you think the Vikings will do, because until we know how much cap space they're actually working with, we can't really determine what they're going to do. The Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons. Ultras Atlanta Falcons. They also are not working with a lot of cap space. They only have $4 million. They're ranked 30th in cap space. Going into next season. Quarterback position, of course, Matt Ryan. Now, running back, Devontae Freeman. Will they let him go? Rumors that they will. And they really don't have a guy that can replace him. So are they looking to let go of Freeman, draft a running back? That's definitely a strategy. I don't have it as a need because they haven't let go of Freeman yet. But it's definitely a strategy. When I look at their offense, I think they're getting rid of Hooper. They've pretty much made that known. I think they are going to draft a left guard or a guard of some sort. I think they believe that Lidstrom can be their right guard at some point. I think they believe in McGarry at right tackle, and they like Jake Matthews and Alex Mack at center. So it's really about their left guard. So they're probably going to draft another guard at some point, whether that's second round, first round, whatever. Tight end, I think they don't... I've never seen tight end as a huge need for this offense. Obviously, Hooper has made it a huge need, but before that, it wasn't ever really a huge prominent position in this offense. Now, maybe that's changed, and they want to sign somebody out there to replace Hooper, but I think, honestly, with the cap space that they have right now, they might just have to draft somebody and take their pickings, and that's not a good sign because the tight end position is not very good in this draft. When you look at their defense, it all starts up front with their edge position, which is not very good. I mean, it's Tack McKinley and nobody else. They could probably bring back Adrian Claiborne for cheap, who performed for them. They could bring back Davison at defensive line for cheap, and that would help. But they need to bring in a name. They need to bring in somebody. I think Michael Bennett would be good. I think someone lower like Irvin or Lawson or Sheard. Somebody that could help with the depth, Pierre Paul. Somebody that could be a starting caliber / rotating guy that's a pass rusher that can get after the quarterback. But they probably are looking to the draft for long term for this position. Again, we need to see how much cap space they're actually working with because it's going to be hard to retain these players. I mean, at a certain point, Atlanta was loaded with young talent, and they've reached this point where they can't keep all of their talent. Devondre Campbell is one of those guys. He's probably going to be gone. But I do think at linebacker, they're more sustainable at replacing these players than at other positions. So that's fine. Corner, they might have to stay pat, even though I think they could use an upgrade at their number 2 corner over Oliver. KZ is more of a safety than a corner. Allen and Neal are good at safety. They have some pieces still. They have Grady Jarrett. They have Tack McKinley. They have Deion Jones. They have Desmond Trufant. They have Keanu Neal. Those guys are all good. It's about surrounding them with enough depth. And I just don't know if the cap space is there for Atlanta to do it the way they want to properly do it. For success, they probably need to let go of Devontae Freeman. They need to say goodbye to Austin Hooper. I think upgrading the offensive line is first and foremost on offense. Finding a number 3 option in the passing game would be nice. But defense, edge rush saves a lot of things. So even if you get one big edge rusher and you can't re-sign Campbell and you don't upgrade your corners, that could be enough to upgrade your defense from one year to the next. So that's Atlanta. The Carolina Panthers. The Panthers, man, they are a fascinating team to say the very least, because out of all teams in the NFL, I have absolutely no idea what the Carolina Panthers are going to do this off season, because they have a new coach, they have a new identity, they have a new regime, they have a new offensive coordinator, a new defensive coordinator, new everything. Cam Newton seems to be their answer at quarterback, and I agree. Cam is the way to go. Cam is a stud when he plays, when he's healthy. That is the only question, and that's a big question, don't get me wrong. They may consider, they're bringing back Kyle Allen, I have heard, and they have Will Grier, so it doesn't seem like they're going to actually be bringing back a quarterback, or bringing in a quarterback, I should say, external quarterback. The one guy that I do feel would be interesting is Marcus Mariota, or maybe Teddy Bridgewater if they want to spend the extra money, but that might be a little bit too pricey. But your hope is Cam is good. If Cam is good, you won't be good regardless, so I understand that if Cam is not there, you're going to be picking in the top 10. And I don't know if the Panthers actually mind that at this point, because it seems like they're going to let a lot of their pretty good players leave and a lot of their veteran players go. So looking at this offensive line, which might be the chess piece, and if I've ever seen it, one of the most complicated jigsaw puzzles I've ever seen in my life. So they traded for Okung at left tackle. Are they moving Greg Little to guard? They got rid of Turner. Their question, my number one need for them is guard, because I don't know who's playing at guard. They literally do not have a guard on their roster. Darrell Williams, do they bring him back or not to play guard? I don't know. Do they move Greg Little to guard or not? I don't know. Taylor Moton, probably their right tackle. I like it there. All right. Matt Paredes, center, good. Do they bring back Van Roten at left guard? Okay, you're working with me there. But do they draft a right guard? Do they sign a guard? What do they do? That's the question. Tight end is a need for me. Ian Thomas is okay. They could use an upgrade there. Probably going to give Ian Thomas a season to be that starter, full-time starter, but you could also add a draft pick there as well. Receiver, I feel like they're pretty decent at least in terms of their number 1 and 2 with Moore and Samuel, and then you can find a number 3, especially in this draft. Defensive line is fascinating. Do they let go of Poe? They have Brian Burns. They have Quan Short. Those are their 2 best players. Are they going to let go of Poe? Are they going to re-sign McCoy or not? I don't think they are going to. I think he's actually going to leave somewhere where he can win right now. My question about the Panthers is, are they going to try and win this year, or are they going to try and rebuild? That's my number 1 question. Vernon Butler seems to be gone. Kyle Love, I mean, who cares? Mario Addison, he's probably gone as well. He's going to test the market. He's going to go somewhere where he can win. So my guess is Brian Burns and who on the edge? Do you go out and you sign a Fowler? Do you sign a Dupree? Do you sign a Pierre-Paul? Do you sign a Vic Beasley? Somebody on the edge. Probably not one of the big names. Probably not Clowney, but somebody. I think you can easily replace Poe. So getting rid of him, I think, would be the smart move. And then Burns, Short, and then another edge player, that's not a bad start. Then you go at linebacker, you lost Luke, which is a huge loss. Shaq Thompson's a stud. Outside of that, I don't know what you do at linebacker. I think Michael Kendricks would be a great add. I think he could do a lot of the things Luke did, not at as high level. But there's options out there for you. Jamie Collins, Kwiatkowski, Trevathan, Bradham, Sean Lee, if you want a veteran. Yeah, so I don't think they're going to be signing Corey Littleton, but maybe. Who knows? James Bradbury seems to be gone. Trey Boston, not sure they want to bring him back. I think it would be smart to bring him back, but I don't think so. Eric Reed can start at strong safety. Corner, I think their secondary, it's been an issue for a long time. I mean, since really Norman was there in 2015, it's been an issue. So they need to probably draft their secondary going forward, unless they somehow blow us out of the water and sign Byron Jones. I don't see it happening, but there are some options out there at a cheaper price for them to upgrade their secondary. So overall, the Panthers fans, I don't have a great idea of the specific players they'll target, but I kind of know the positions. Guard, secondary, edge, probably replacing Luke. You'll have to look out for that in this free agency. My question is, how aggressive will they be? Aggressive or not? The New Orleans Saints. The Saints are not many pieces away from once again being in that conversation as a Super Bowl representative in the NFC. The Saints, of course, they're bringing back Drew Brees. Honestly, the Saints to me are not a very exciting team this offseason because they don't have a lot of clear-cut needs. They don't have a lot of clear-cut questions. I think their questions are already answered. I think Drew Brees is coming back. I think Teddy is leaving. I think Taysom Hill will be back. I think they will re-sign Von Bell. And I think that pretty much everything else, Andrews Pete will be gone. And I think everything else they're figuring out with the draft and their cap space. So left guard, I mean, do they want to try and go all out for Joe Thuney? I don't think that's going to happen, but they'll probably be better off drafting someone there, or they could move Easton or McCoy to guard if they really feel like it. That could be an option. My biggest needs for them is a number 2 corner, a number 2 receiver, and if you bring back Von Bell, safety's not really an issue. But I think the things that would make the Saints go from really good NFC team to Super Bowl team is adding that number 2 complimentary receiver, adding that number 2 corner that can play man, and adding that extra edge rusher. And those are all within vicinity for them to do. And I feel like the Saints should go all out this year, of any year, because this might be Breeze's last. So I really like Bradley Roby for them. I really like Denard for them. I like Poole for them. I like Jimmy Smith for them. All of these players for corner on their team, I think, would be an upgrade at number 2 over an Eli Apple, who will be gone in free agency. Just having that number 2 guy that can play man, that doesn't get beat on a consistent basis, would be a huge lift to this defense. Adding an edge rusher that's maybe a veteran, or even an interior player like a Gerald McCoy, like a player like that would be a big update, or a big upgrade. A Mike Daniels, like a veteran that wants to win at the end of his career that can rush the passer. A Michael Bennett, a Bruce Irvin, a Mario Addison, a Adrian Claiborne. Any of these players on the defensive line and the edge would be awesome for the Saints, I believe. Linebacker, I think they're okay. They can draft somebody as a backup. I think with Demario Davis, who's a stud, and with Kiko Alonso, they're good with their 1-2 at linebacker. Kiko was good for them last year. So really, it's left guard. Oh, receiver. I should bring up receiver. Emmanuel Sanders is the fit. I just don't know if they have the money. But he would be nice. I mean, Cobb at a lesser degree would be interesting. Those are really the free agents, I think. Other than that, you're looking to the draft. And you just hope to get better out of Traquan Smith at some point. I just don't know if he's ever going to have it. So, left guard, you need to replace Pete and hopefully upgrade. Edge rush, corner, wide receiver. Those are the Saints. And that's how you get to the Super Bowl, Saints. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a team that didn't finish so well last year, that have a lot of things to do this offseason. This is like an interesting place. I've said interesting a lot on this stream. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team that Ndamukong Suh, Shaquille Barrett, Carl Nassib, Jason Pierre-Paul, Dotson, and their dang quarterback, Jameis Winston. For a team that didn't finish very well last year, actually probably better than people expected, but not great. They didn't make the playoffs. They have a lot of players of big name on their team that are free agents. How do they go about distributing this cap? They have a lot of it. They have $85 million, the third most in the league. I think they tag Shaquille Barrett and probably sign him. They probably let Nassib and maybe even Pierre-Paul go, although they've said they want Pierre-Paul back. And they said that Suh wants to be back. And see, I would rather get rid of Suh and sign Pierre-Paul. That would be me. We'll see what they end up doing. I think it's easier to replace interior defensive linemen than it is to replace edge rushers, in my opinion. In my opinion, you re-sign Jameis Winston because you're not going to find a guy, unless you get Tom Brady, which I don't think is going to happen. You're not going to find a guy that can make as many big-time throws as Winston. Winston played very well last year. I know he threw a lot of interceptions, but he makes a lot of big plays. And if you upgrade your defense, you could have a team that could go to the playoffs because he scores points. We know that. You know, he might turn the ball over, but in Arians' offense, they force the ball down the field. And there's no quarterback in free agency that's a better downfield thrower, including Tom Brady, than Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston's a perfect fit at quarterback for this offense. So, honestly, I think you re-sign Winston if you're not going to go the draft route, which I don't think they will. O.J. Howard, you could trade. I could see that. Cameron Brate is fine at tight end if you do trade him. On the offensive line, you could use a right tackle if Dotson doesn't return, which he very well could. Donovan Smith, Marpet, Jensen, you're good there. Right guard might be a need, but I don't think they're going to go out into free agency to do that. That's more of a draft thing. Wide receiver, you're looking for a number 3 as Perryman moves on, but you have probably the best 1-2 in the league at wide receiver. Maybe you or the Vikings is one or the other. As of last year, you have the best one. But it just seems like Justin Watson, Scott Miller, all these guys can step up and be the number 3 within this offense and with the Bucs. And I don't know if part of it is actually Jameis Winston who just gives these guys chances to make plays and they end up doing it, or if it's the offense, or if it's just the great drafting of the wide receiver position. But the Bucs have receivers for days. Ronald Jones will be at running back. Peyton Barber is gone. You might trade for like David Johnson. You might sign. I don't think you'll sign Melvin Gordon because I don't think you have enough money to sign him and then sign all the other guys. But a Kenyon Drake would be a great fit for this offense. So keep your eye out on running back. Maybe they go to the draft for that. Safety and corner are the big needs that you want to bring in. I think, if you were able to sign Byron Jones, that would be amazing. I don't think it's going to happen, but Trey Waynes, a mid-tier guy like that would be an upgrade. Safety, I think Harris is in the conversation. For the Bucs, I think Clinton Dix, Trey Boston, all those guys make sense to me at free safety. They'll at least sign one safety, one pretty high caliber safety. And then they might look to draft another. So that's my opinion on the Bucs. I think this is a great offseason for them. If they make 1 or 2 big signings that can improve their team, I think they are pretty close to being a playoff caliber football team. And the last division here tonight, the NFC West. Let's kick it off with the Kyler Murray Arizona Cardinals. You don't have to worry about quarterback, Cardinals fans. You're good there after last season. Isn't that like a relief? You have your quarterback. Now, what is it about for the rest of the roster? Well, let's start off with the running back that performed very well for you last year. That is Kenyon Drake. So they're in a interesting pickle at the running back position are the Arizona Cardinals. Do you re-sign Kenyon Drake Do you trade David Johnson? Do you let go of Kenyon Drake? And in my opinion, they want to keep Kenyon Drake. They want to re-sign Kenyon Drake. They want to trade David Johnson. The problem is David Johnson's contract. So they got to maneuver that. They got to figure that out. And I think that's step one on offense for them. Step two is the offensive line, which their top need is tackle, right tackle specifically, center number 2, right guard number 3, in my opinion. I believe that they will sign a right tackle. I don't know if it's going to be Brian Bulaga. I don't know if it's going to be Darrell Williams. I don't know if it's going to be Vaitai. I don't know who it's going to be, but they're going to sign a right tackle, and they'll probably draft one of these positions, center or right guard. I like McGovern for this offense. I like Garland for this offense at center as well. Wide receiver, they're good with Fitz. They're good with Isabella, Kirk. Those are 3 of your 4 starting receivers going forward. They could bring back their free agents if they choose to. I think they're going to draft somebody in the first round and maybe even in multiple rounds in this draft, because Kingsbury, this is the time to draft your receivers because you know them well, because you played against them, you coach them, whatever it may be from college. So you draft a receiver, and I think you're good at receiver, really. If you get one number 1 receiver, you're good, because Kirk's a good number 2. Fitz is still a number 3 at this point, maybe even arguably a number 2. And Isabella is at least a good number 4, if not better than that. So you have that. At the tight end position, you don't really use it, right? Like the Arizona Cardinals offense doesn't really value the tight end position. So I kind of feel like that's not a big thing. You could re-sign Charles Clay if you like. Otherwise, I think they're fine, and they might just end up drafting somebody with some good measurables that they like. Now, defensively, there's a lot of interesting spots, because I could see the Cardinals upgrading almost every single spot on their defense, which is not a good thing, but it's also, you have to keep your mind open for this. I think they do need an edge rusher opposite of Chandler Jones. And they don't really have cap space for a number 1 type of guy, which they don't need one because they have Chandler Jones. But if you could add a complementary edge rusher that could help Chandler Jones, I think that would elevate this defense a lot. So look out for them to potentially be in the market for a number 2 edge rusher. And there's a lot of them. A veteran like, let's go down the list. Addison, Beasley, Irvin, Nassib, Ogba, Claiborne, Sheard. Any of those guys would be an upgrade from what they already have in like Cassius Marsh, who is god-awful. He sucks. I don't even want to talk about him. Interior defensive linemen, they could definitely look at. I think that's probably the place that they spend money on their defense, whether that's Shelby Harris, Hargrave, Reeder, Pierce, Brockers, Sue. One of these guys will be a Cardinal, because I think also another way to upgrade your Chandler Jones and get even more effect out of Chandler Jones and to help Chandler Jones, and that's the goal, is to get some interior pressure, and that helps Chandler Jones. So I think a defensive lineman might be a little less expensive than an edge rusher. They could afford upgrading both positions this offseason. Safety, outside of Budda Baker, they could use one. There's a lot of options out there. There's not a lot of great strong safeties out there, but they could potentially look at one there. And corner, Byron Murphy, they like, and Patrick Peterson is Patrick Peterson, although he's not quite the same player. And they have Robert Alford. They could definitely look to upgrade that, but I don't think that's a pressing need. They'll probably look to the draft for the corner position. The Los Angeles Rams. The LA Rams, a team that went to the Super Bowl just 2 years ago, is looking to maintain their roster. I don't want to say upgrade, because they're in a difficult position. They are in the bottom 7 or 8 for cap space in the league. They have a lot of important players that are free agents, including Michael Brockers, Dante Fowler, Corey Littleton, Andrew Whitworth, Austin Blythe. All of these guys were starters for them. Now, where they do have players is corner, Aaron Donald, receiver, which I could see them trading one if they like, because if they want to trade one, get rid of some of the cap space, spend it elsewhere, that might be a good move for them. But the wide receiver position is so valued for McVay's offense that it's an interesting pickle. I think the pickle they put themselves in is Todd Gurley. That is really the piece that if they could go back in time, they wouldn't have paid him. Tight end, they're good. Maybe even moving a tight end for other assets might be a good move to move Everett or Higbee. They're keeping Goff. They're not moving on from him. But offensive line, they really need to look at. So I think like McGovern would be an excellent signing at center for them. I think a guard, they're not in the market for like Tooney or Glasgow, but somebody in at guard, a veteran, would be nice. They could go to the draft. Andrew Whitworth, they probably could get back on a contract at left tackle for one more year. As long as they upgrade one of their interior offensive line positions, I will feel like they accomplished something, because that interior offensive line is one of the worst in the league. Michael Brockers is likely gone. The question is who replaces him. There's not a lot here. I think they're going to have to look at low-tier free agents that fit the defensive scheme of Brandon Staley, and they can go forward with that. Clay Matthews, they have a linebacker. They need another outside linebacker because Fowler's probably gone as well. Ebukam is okay. Littleton's also probably gone. Like, they're going to have to decide who they want to keep. They probably want to keep Andrew Whitworth. They probably want to keep Littleton or Fowler, so they want to choose there. Do they franchise Fowler? Do they sign Littleton? A lot of questions, but they're good in the secondary. They're good there. The Rams, it's all about deciding what players on your roster you want to keep, and then from there, you can work. But interior offensive line, if you lose Fowler, you need an edge producer. If you lose Littleton, you need a linebacker. And if you might need an extra safety in the mix. It wouldn't hurt. But Taylor Rapp and John Johnson are probably the answers at safety. I am intrigued to see what the Rams do, because I want to see how they can get back to the playoffs. Last year was a very disappointing season for them. They've spent a lot of money on a lot of high-name free agents, a lot of top-of-roster guys, but have not filled out the bottom of their roster. And to me, that's been a mistake of the way they've built their team. That is not the way that great franchises build their teams. The Rams have gone opposite of that. So let's see how they redeem themselves, and let's see if they can get after drafting really well, and let's see if they can add some veteran, low-key free agents that end up playing better for them within their team. The Seattle Seahawks, the second last team on this team-by-team breakdown. The Seattle Seahawks have to be one of the best teams to watch this free agency because of the amount of money they have, because of the position they're in to be a contender next season, because they have Russell Wilson, because I believe a lot of free agents want to play in Seattle because of Russell Wilson and because of Pete Carroll and because of the establishment they have, because of the entire vibe of the Seahawks. A lot of people like Seattle. They have a good reputation across the league. So, what do they need? I believe they need an edge rusher. Okay, when we look at their defense, Jadeveon Clowney is a free agent. Ziggy Ansah is a free agent. Your starting edge rushers of this moment would be L.J. Collier, who you drafted in the first round, Rasheem Green, who you drafted in the third round 2 years ago. That's not good enough to me, especially specifically because Collier you drafted, and he didn't really play. So, and then you look at defensive line, and this is in conjunction. This is together. Jerron Reed probably will be gone. He's a free agent. Al Woods is a free agent. Quinton Jefferson's a free agent. Your three best interior defensive linemen, and you throw in Poona Ford, who is on the team. By the way, all name team Poona Ford. Those three guys would be potentially gone. You want to keep at least one of them, and I think Jefferson would be the guy to keep, but he probably is the most expensive because you could argue Reed might be because of his production in the past as a pass rusher. Woods is older. You could probably keep him for very cheap, and he's a nice run stuffer for you. So you could bring him back. But you got to look at it. Do you trade for Chris Jones? This is a team I legitimately think could trade for Chris Jones. Do you bring in DJ Reader or Hargrave or Sue or McCoy? I think McCoy would love to play for Seattle. Do you bring in Mike Daniels? I think, this is the way I would go about it if I was Seattle. I re-sign Clowney, and then I try to bring in like veteran interior defensive linemen, whether that's McCoy, Sue, Daniels, Michael Bennett, bring him back, Bruce Irvin, bring him back, these type of guys. That's what I would do, and then I would just draft. Because LJ Collier you drafted, and then I would look to the secondary. Maybe they splash on Byron Jones, which has never been their thing, but they could. Bradbury would be perfect for this defense. Did they go out there and pay him? Do they pay Trey Waynes? Jimmy Smith would be a good add. But I feel like I like Griffin, I like Flowers, but I do feel like they need to upgrade their man-to-man abilities in the secondary, and a safety would be great for them. Jimmy Ward would be perfect. Adrian Phillips, I think, would be excellent for them at safety. Those two guys I would keep an eye out on. Do they bring back Michael Kendricks? I think they very well could. I don't think it'll cost a ton, but I do think he'll have a market. So, Seattle, they, first and foremost, defensive line. Then you look at secondary. How can we improve that unit from last year? Because it wasn't very good. Whether that's adding a couple depth pieces here and there. It went a long way adding Quandre Diggs, but probably another corner, maybe a starting caliber safety would be nice for them there. Offensively, I'm looking at offensive line. Obviously, right tackle. Honestly, I don't think the offensive line is as bad as people think it is. And I don't really think it needs to be great. I mean, we've seen the Seahawks produce offensively with Russell Wilson without having a great offensive line. I honestly think it comes down to, for the Seahawks, just drafting offensive linemen. And they haven't really been good at it, but drafting them would go a long way. They could be in play, though, if I think about it, for a veteran guy like a Whitworth or a Peters or a Balaga, or I don't think it will be quite Conklin, a Gilbert, Beecham, one of these veteran guys that are 30-plus years old but can still play and can help you win a Super Bowl, because that's what the Seahawks are looking to do. Then at receiver, you're looking for a number 3. I think you try the Josh Gordon experiment. Jaron Brown's a free agent. David Moore is not quite what you need. I really like Philip Dorsett for them. I think he would be a great addition. I think anyone with speed. Taylor Gabriel. Bring back Jermaine Kearse. Why not? I think that would. Paul Richardson obviously makes sense for me. So those guys. Tight end, you're good. You brought in Greg Olsen. You have Will Disley. You have Jacob Hollister. Ed Dixon. You have 4 deep at tight end. And you have Luke Wilson as a free agent. He could also come back if you need him to. You could just call him up any day of the week. Those are the Seahawks. I'm fascinated to see what the Seahawks do. They have a lot of money, but they have a lot of questions. And the last team, after hours here on the Bottom Line View, San Francisco 49ers. The best roster in the NFL. What do the San Francisco 49ers do this offseason? Let's get it out of the way. I don't have it on the team needs. Quarterback. Tom Brady. Is Tom Brady going home? Home, I mean San Francisco. Is Tom Brady going to team up with Kyle Shanahan? Is Tom Brady going to replace Jimmy Garoppolo? How funny that would be. I think it's a possibility that it could happen, because I have not heard the 49ers say, at least I have not seen the coaches, I have not seen John Lynch, I have not seen the owner say Jimmy Garoppolo is our guy for next season. And I wouldn't be questioning this if the 49ers were like an average team. I would say, okay, Jimmy Garoppolo, he's not a bad quarterback. I would say he's in the top 20, at least, right? But he's not like, he's not an elite guy, and he's not potentially what Tom Brady could give you for this next season. And when you're thinking about what the 49ers could be next year, you're thinking about winning the Super Bowl. You're thinking about winning the Super Bowl. You were this close to winning the Super Bowl, and I would argue you were Tom Brady away from winning the Super Bowl. You were a couple completions away from winning the Super Bowl. You were a little bit of more composure in the Super Bowl from winning the Super Bowl. And would Tom Brady give you that? That's the first question. I don't think it happens. If I had to bet, I don't think it happens. But it very well is a thought. It's a thought. I do think, though, you also have to think about Jimmy Garoppolo. Okay? He's only played one season. That was essentially his rookie year. He's played less games than Baker Mayfield has played. And at times last year, he played very well. And he fits this offense well. He makes pretty accurate passes. He has an ultra quick release. He has a lot of good things about him. He's a leader. Teammates like him. Teammates have stood up for him. I think that's the first question you have to answer. Is Jimmy the future? If not, what do we do? Because we want to win the Super Bowl. So that's the first question, outside of the team needs. Second is, I think they need a stud receiver. I think they need a guy at receiver that makes a difference. Now, George Kittle, you could argue, is that guy, but he's a tight end, right? He's basically Gronk of this era upcoming. Deebo Samuel, you could argue, is a number one caliber guy. Like, you could argue Kittle is Gronk and Samuel is Edelman. I could see that, right? But I feel like if Sanders is gone, you at least need a number two. If you don't have Sanders, I think you need a number one. Do they make a trade? Do they trade for A.J. Green? Do they sign Robbie Anderson? Do they sign... I think a guy that they could sign as a depth guy is Taylor Gabriel from Atlanta and Cleveland with Shanahan, who produced in Shanahan's offense. I think you could draft one. I think you could trade up and draft one. There's a lot of things they could do. Second round, maybe they could draft one, but do they trade for somebody? There's a lot of questions. Like, does Dante Pettis finally become something? I like Kendrick Bourne. I like Samuel, but I feel like they need another receiver. And Trent Taylor is going to be good. Trent Taylor is good when he plays. I like him as a slot receiver. But you have a lot of slot guys. You have a lot of okay receivers. I need that one stud for me. And Jalen Hurd, also, who's a rookie last year, didn't get to play, will be around. But he's more of like a gadget type of guy. Offensive line-wise, you're good. The only thing you're really thinking about is the future. And that's why I have tackle and guard here, because the 49ers don't have a lot of needs. So you're thinking about tackle and guard for the future. Future prospects. That probably comes through the draft, though. Running back, you could argue it's the best position in the league at that spot. Mostert, Breida, Coleman. Do you trade one? You also have McKinnon. Jeez. And Wilson. Do you trade a running back? Do you trade Coleman? Do you trade Breida? Probably Breida would be the guy you trade. And I'm sure a team would love Breida. I'm sure Breida could be the number one back for a lot of teams. Defensively, Eric Armstead's question number one. I think they want to bring back Armstead. I think they want to keep this defensive line together. The only thing you have to worry about is crippling yourself for the future. But I think Armstead is the type of guy you want to keep. I think you want to keep the Armstead, Buckner, Boza, Ford front four. Because I feel like that's the best front four I've seen in a long time. I mean, an incredibly long time. The way they performed last year, it was insane. So keeping that together would be great. I think Sheldon Day is gone. All these other guys. I think Ronald Blair, as good as he's played in moments, is probably gone. Secondary-wise, nobody is a free agent outside of Jimmy Ward, but that's a big one. I mean, you could argue he's almost as important, if not more important, than Richard Sherman. And I think Jimmy Ward is the guy that I could see being overpaid. Like, I think Armstead is going to get a worthy contract of how good he is. Jimmy Ward is a really good player, but he is that type of player that's a free safety, strong safety, slot corner. He's a Tyrann Mathieu, to put it in perspective. He plays like a lot of different positions. He's very versatile, and he's very important to the defense. So I think the 49ers' top priority will be Jimmy Ward to re-sign him. But if somebody overpays him, they'll let him go. That's how I feel about it. That would make safety the clear-cut number one need for the 49ers. Eric Armstead, at least one of these guys will be back. You can count on that. It's just if both aren't back, that instantly becomes a need for the team. Jason Verrett never got to play. You could re-sign him for like a 1-year contract for probably nothing and see how he plays. But corner is interesting because I've always felt like the 49ers were better on defense because of their pass rush than their secondary. So I feel like corner, if you could get a low-key signing in there that fits the scheme perfectly, then that would be cool. But, I mean, Sherman, Williams, and Witherspoon are not bad. So, and Mosley. That's 4 guys that are pretty good. Like, Sherman's really good still, but you always have to be aware of his drop-off. Williams is good as a nickel corner. Mosley is solid. Witherspoon is but could improve. So, 49ers, I don't have much else to say. I mean, they're just a really, really good roster. It all starts with the Jimmy Garoppolo question. It then goes to Eric Armstead and Jimmy Ward. And then you're just looking to, maybe we get a receiver, then we fill in our depth, and we try to make another run at this. We have the coach, we have the OC, we have the DC. Let's get this done. Those are my previews for the 2020 NFL free agency. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure that you do subscribe to the Bottom Line View if you haven't already. I know probably at this point all of you guys watching are subscribers of the channel. So if you haven't already, Gronk spiked the like button. If you enjoyed, you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Mitch Milani. They're both the same. Mitch Milani, MITCHMILANI. And of course, comment your opinion. If you're watching this after the fact, comment your opinion on what you thought of my opinion on your team. Okay. Let's answer some quick questions, and then I'll get out. So let's show the scene. All right. Notorious says, great show, Mitch. You're a beast. Thank you. That was probably the longest video I've ever done in my life. Like, straight. It'll be... Okay. Where do I scroll up to? How about we just... If you guys had questions, just repost them, please. Because I just want to go off the top. So let's just go like that. So if you had a question, just copy paste. I do think Manuel Sanders will be gone. Sean. I don't think they can afford him. And I think he'll go somewhere else that gives him a little bit more money, whether that's Baltimore, New England, who else did I say? Saints. One of those teams looking for a veteran receiver. John, what's going on, bro? Are you ready for it? Did you do that music test yet? Jeffrey says, good show. Thank you, Jeff. Or Jeffrey. Don't know what you prefer. Hot Take says, Mitch Milani from Bottom Line View, how did you become such a legend? Hard work and commitment. Jeremy says, where will Robbie Anderson go? I would love to see Green Bay, but, like, I could see Oakland. I could see the Jets. Again, I could see him going back there. I could see the Ravens. I could see... Who's some other teams? I don't know if the Colts quite like him as a receiver. I actually think he'd fit the Cardinals, but I don't think the Cardinals are looking to go in that direction. The interesting part about the wide receiver position in this free agency is the fact that there's so many good ones in the draft that it's going to affect the pricing, the money that the receivers make in free agency. Well, I mean, I feel like Sean, I should say, or Israel, I should say this. If they lose Jimmy Ward or Armstead, they could afford both of them. Probably. Moss's kid, he's not quite a first rounder. I think he'll be like a mid-round, like a third round guy. But yeah, he could definitely be in the conversation, especially Dallas, who passed on Randy Moss back in the day and probably want to get back at that. And I know Randy Moss's favorite team growing up was the Cowboys, so. But I want New England to draft him, so. But tight end. I mean, they could probably bring back Witten as their second guy. Jarwin, they have. Who would I like there? I think Ebron would be good there. Cam to the Broncos. Cam Newton? You talking about Cam Newton? I don't think so. Where'd you hear that? I think they're going to go forward with Luck. Let me see. Or not Luck, Locke. Oh my goodness. I just read a tweet that says Gronk is signing a contract with WWE. Probably for WrestleMania. That's kind of funny though. Witten as coach. Yeah. Turtle says he hates Witherspoon. Oh, how's Panarin playing? Breida to the Cowboys. I don't think they can. They gotta sign their own guys. But I don't know if it'll cost a lot. But I actually like the backup that they have. Name is escaping me at the moment. Played pretty well last year. Who's the Cowboys backup? I can't remember his name. I'm still streaming. Do I think any team could use Marquise Goodwin? Yeah, I think a lot of teams could use Marquise Goodwin because of his speed. Anytime you have speed, you have a market. That's what I'll say. And I think Marquise Goodwin, but when he's like 65, he'll still run like a 4.7. I think right now he runs like a 4.3. Probably used to run a 4.2. But I think, you know what would be interesting if you went back to Buffalo? Because they could use that type of receiver. I think the Ravens could use him. I think him with Brown would be awesome. Who else? It's interesting. Who's looking for a downfield type of receiver? Oh my God. Don't even. If the Chiefs got him, I think it would be like the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. That would be like the fastest receiving core that would ever exist in human history. Like, I don't think you would have to ever watch football again. If Marquise Goodwin, Tyreek Hill, and Mecole Hardman were on the same receiver group, I think the Raiders make sense. Washington, Eagles would make a lot of sense. Who else? I think the Packers. Stubborn people. Saints, maybe? Milani, who could 49ers trade that up with or back? What are you talking about, bro? Sack says, San Francisco looking for a new quarterback or the same. I think they'll stay with Jimmy for at least one more year. If he doesn't get it done, then they might move on. Hot take says Bills versus Seahawks Super Bowl. Screenshot this. I remember this. It's going to happen. Yeah, Goodwin could go to the Cowboys if they don't re-sign Cobb. Sack says Boza brother team up. That would be crazy, but I don't see the point because they have D Ford. I mean, if they didn't have D Ford, unless they traded D Ford for Boza, which I don't think the Chargers would do that. Now I gotta cut all these videos and edit all these videos down and release them all. Damn. Not tonight. Going to bed. All right. I think I'm going to end it there. Thank you guys for joining me. Again, if you enjoyed, Gronk spike the like button, future WWE superstar. Subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more. And if you're watching this after the fact, again, comment your opinion. All right, guys. It's been Mitch. Enjoyed it tonight. See you soon for the next live stream. And keep watching the free agency content. Free agency coming under a week. Peace.